Now, I am the most sarcastic person in the room, so I'm just going to tell you what this night is all about. It's about promises for teams, new quarterback starts that may or may not work, and stuff that we'll never ever find out. So why not do a 3.5 hour show basically on guessing? Let the bad takes fly. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Anthony Strait.
And I'm Joe Tufaro.
Thank you, Joe, for joining us as possible. One of our best football friends in the business. This is the On the Sports Lines College NFL Draft 2023 special. All right. So, gentlemen, ladies, and all of those who are watching tonight, high voter, huge upside, ready to start day one, great IQ, small hands, all phrases that you'll hear tonight as we deal with the class of 2023 of the National Football League. The top picks, the locals, the QBs who will surely be busts in a few years. Gentlemen, we have it all as we react to the picks live. And oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers talk as well. Strait's ready. And well, we're live and we're hoping that teams go real fast in making a decision. But luckily for us, we have something else to talk about in the form of Lamar Jackson, one of the NFL's greatest offseason stories, from Lamar Jackson's contract extension, from Lamar Jackson's injury to end the season, from the possibility that Lamar might have been milking it a little bit to not playing in this playoff game versus the Bengals. That's bullshit, but you know what? I still have to bring it up. I still have to bring it up because people talk about it. To I want to be traded from the Ravens, to why hasn't anybody actually picked me, actually talked about me, to everything. Finally, our long national nightmare is over. Jack's got a 5-year contract extension today. That is $260 million, $185 million of it guaranteed. So he didn't get the Deshaun Watson, but he surely has more respect than Deshaun Watson actually does. By the way, he's going to be caught by Joe Burrow in a few weeks, because all we need to do is see headline after headline, like, I'm the highest paid player. No, I'm the highest paid player. No, I'm the highest paid player. So who wants to go first? Lamar Jackson is going to be a Raven for the foreseeable future, Jay. He'll be in your division, very strong division of quarterbacks.
Yep.
Right move for Baltimore, wrong move for Baltimore. What do you think?
I don't know that Baltimore really had an option other than to keep Lamar Jackson. I mean, they assigned the franchise tag to him, and granted, it was the one that allowed other teams to talk to him. But I don't think Eric DeCosta really had any intention of letting Lamar Jackson walk. I think he knew that the contract demands that Jackson was making were going to preclude other teams from, putting up an offer sheet. You can call it collusion, you can call it whatever you want. And, the NFLPA can scream long and loud, but I've said this on more than one occasion. The owners of the NFL were never going to allow Deshaun Watson's contract to become anything other than an outlier and an example of absolute idiocy by an NFL owner. So I think the deal works for both sides. The Ravens get the length of time that they want. They get the 5 years. Jackson gets $185 million guaranteed, and the $260 million overall puts him $1 million above Jalen Hurts' contract in terms of average and, in terms of the value of the contract. What's interesting to me, and I'm glad we can finally look to pivot from finances to football, because I want to see how Jackson adapts to Todd Monken's offense. Or is Monken going to, adapt his scheme, which is nowhere near like the Greg Roman scheme that they've been running for years, to fit Jackson's skill set. So I'm glad this is finally done. I think the deal works for both sides. Now we can actually look at, the football fit is now that the finances have been fit.
Joe, you've always been an outspoken person against Jackson and his style of play. Plus, He's injury prone. He hasn't lasted the last 2 years as the Baltimore Ravens starting quarterback at the end of the season. And while a lot of people were like, why didn't the Ravens or why didn't other teams go for him? He really brings a lot more risk to some teams than he would reward. The Ravens are the right team for him, but I don't know who else would want him.
Yeah, no, and I think Jay's right. I think they didn't have much of a choice. They're trying to, again, not having an agent and not being able to maybe explain things to him as to differences between guarantees and money, and just wanting to hear the extra money. It's kind of silly at this point that it doesn't seem to be based on actual talent at this moment. It's, oh, I'm the next guy, so I have to get more money. And even though he's not really getting more money, probably over the course because of opt-outs and signing bonuses and all kinds of stuff, it doesn't really matter at this point. That's not what it's based on anymore. And that's a shame because, like you said, Joe Burrow then should get, since he's actually gotten to, a couple of playoff games and done very well, and then what do you do when you sign Mahomes? You're going to give him $60 million a year? What do you do if Daniel Jones goes the next 4 years in his contract and wins 2 championships? We're going to pay him $80 million a year? It's a ridiculous number.
New York will pay him $80 million a year, that's for sure.
But I mean, that you just can't keep going with this just because you're the next guy up.
Yeah.
And you had some success. Again, even a guy like Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 championship in 14 years. I know he's going to win one this year, guaranteed already. I don't know why we're doing this draft. But seriously, I don't know how do you measure these guys? Lamar Jackson has been an awful, awful quarterback as far as throwing the ball. Yes, he had one fantastic year, as a lot of these guys do when they first break in, because they're new. And I remember, Rabbi, you and I talked last year. You asked me what Giant game I was most excited to see. And it was the Baltimore game because Wink Martindale has watched Lamar Jackson practice. And they completely shut him down and they beat them. And, it's once people get to know you and put you on film, you're not all that great anymore.
Nope.
And I don't know about, getting 5 more years. I'm sure it's not 5 years. Stan, I'm sure they can get out after 3, as they can in most contracts. So I just think it's silly to just completely have to be the next headline guy to say I got more money than you did.
Yeah. And, the funny thing is, we talked about this, the thing about, the reason you should have an agent, and you can talk about, the offensive tackle or, the defensive guy who, negotiated their own contract. There's a difference at that than there is when you're, considered a tier 1 or high tier 2 quarterback in this league. These negotiations get contentious. The meetings that these agents are in with the, their opposite numbers in the GM and personnel department, the unflattering things that get said about why your client's not worth this. And honestly, the reason an agent is there is so that his client doesn't have to hear these things and take them personally.
Right.
And I think to a large extent, Lamar Jackson took all this personally. He did not recognize that this is how the business of the NFL is done. And, and I think if he had an agent who, could, kind of back channel things and keep, talks going and, make sure that, his client doesn't, get offended by the things that are said, because those things never reach his ears. And I got to give the Ravens credit. They did a good job of keeping that stuff in house. They never, played this out in the press. So I think this would have gotten done a whole lot sooner with a whole lot less acrimony if he'd had a damn agent.
And Jay, it's funny because I think everybody simplifies the fact of negotiations like, oh, Joe Schoen and Daniel Jones and his agent sat down together. If you read through, again, I know nobody reads anymore, but if you had read through a lot of the things said about those negotiations, Joe Schoen at one point goes, oh yeah, no, the analytics guys were in there yesterday, and these guys, they go through everything. Like you said, they brought up, hey, you're number 2 in turnovers in your career.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff comes up. It's just like baseball players.
Yeah, at arbitration. Yeah.
There's a guy sitting there going, hey, you stink with guys on third base with less than 2. Hey, you're not up to snuff with whoever it is that you're looking to be even with. And they have to try to break that down to save the team some money somewhere. You can't just walk in there and go, oh yeah, we really want you. You're the greatest thing since, we've ever had. And, and we're definitely going to sign you and we want to keep you. well, then why are you bothering with all the negotiations? That part of the negotiation is having, like you said, Jay, to put up with that stuff and then have a way to come back at it and say, well, here's his value, here's his age, here's his upsides. And you have to go back and forth and talk about it. And that's what it takes a while.
I think.
Well, I was.
I think.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Before I throw it to you, Anthony, I think one of the bigger things is, what does your team need if that person goes somewhere else? And I think the Baltimore Ravens can kind of know that, because as much as Tyler Huntley does the same stuff as Lamar Jackson does, the Ravens become the worst team in that division with Tyler Huntley starting 16 games without a viable backup, regardless of what team is behind him, because especially in that conference, you need the horse to ride you. Now, Anthony, what do you think about all of this? And honestly, when you look at Lamar, yes, the resume is not as good as we thought it was going to be after his MVP season in 2019, but there's still a lot of untapped potential around here if he stays healthy.
Yeah, first off, remind me when I do my contract negotiations, I go to our professional legal expert, Sean Roman. That's number one. But number two, the Ravens didn't have a choice, because good quarterbacks, they're hard to find. Starting quarterbacks don't grow on trees, and a quarterback that actually wins games, they don't fall from the sky often. And then you look at Lamar Jackson's career overall record, 45-16, 738 winning percent. That's the fourth best of any starting quarterback to debut in the Super Bowl era. Obviously, Rabbi mentioned this MVP season, we threw 36 touchdowns. But honestly, looking like this, the past two seasons, he's thrown for 33 touchdowns to go with the 20 interceptions. And he did that when the Ravens got rid of the lone good wide receiver he had in Hollywood Brown 2 years ago in the offseason. They only had Aaron just a tight end to throw the ball to with any consistency. There was a game against Jacksonville. Well, that game's a route if any of the receivers actually hold on to the football. So the Ravens, as far as putting talent and putting weapons around Lamar Jackson, hasn't exactly done him any favors. And Lamar Jackson, I do want to, because of the length of the contract and the fact that he has been injured for the last two seasons, do he change up his quarterbacking style? Do he decide when he can't get enough yards to go down, to slide and look for the next play? And we see Russell Wilson do that over the years, specifically when he was with the Seahawks. He get the big game, the big chance, but then go down almost immediately before he can take a big hit. And honestly, I think of it like this is how is he's going to fit in that offensive scheme? I think the best coaches, they tailor the offense to what the quarterback skill set is. I mean, I always see far too often where a coach is be damned wanting to make a quarterback play a certain way that actually takes away from what they do best. You know, Lamar Jackson is a dual threat quarterback who can run, but you want to keep enough plays in that scheme, or at least enough formations that what defense are going to have to honor that and stay honest. But they brought in Odell Beckham Jr. We have to see how healthy he is coming back from the knee injury. But the Ravens just did not have any other options. And the fact that it got this far before they were able to come to some kind of expansion, it's a fail on both sides. One, Lamar Jackson, because of his demands, who knows how crazy that turned out to be, and also the Baltimore Ravens, because you had 2 years to work something out, and you knew that day was coming when he could potentially be a free agent and you lose it for nothing, and you still had to sweat it out a little bit and even wait till draft night. So now, I mean, the front office can at least sleep easy tonight, realizing that they have draft picks, don't have to waste more on a quarterback, because now they have the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future.
But the problem is, and especially in that conference, I can just name you these names right off the bat: Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, because he has the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow. Not going to mention Deshaun Watson, but yeah, let's mention Deshaun Watson in terms of just being on the plane. Kenny Pickett,
Mahomes,
Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes. What does re-signing Jackson, like? You can't be stagnant, but you need to be viable, and that is the problem with this. You need to be viable. And right now, the Ravens are just there. And I think having Lamar, you could tell him, slide, make sure you do what you need to do. But guess what? I don't know what this team can really do to just topple Cincinnati in that division. And again, you mentioned that he's played 61 games. He's also missed 19, and he's missed, I think, 11 in the last 2 years. And again, the most important games in the end is what he's missed. And that is the biggest problem. I think I know who Carolina is picking, so I'm just going to read this out anyway. So the Chicago Bears, remember them? They earned the #1 pick for 2023. But as the QB position is king, and that's truly the one and only position that the Bears are good at, they traded that pick for the following to the Carolina Panthers about a few months ago. Wide receiver DJ Moore, a second-round pick in 2023, a first-round pick in 2024, and a second-round pick in 2025. Gosh, that's it? That's nothing. Why don't you just throw in the statue of Jerry Richardson while you're at it? Anyway, here's the pick that was worth all of that as the Panthers picked that #1, Bryce Young, former Heisman Trophy winner, one former Heisman Trophy winner, and quarterback of Alabama. So, Bryce Young is probably one of the better developing quarterbacks that Alabama has ever had. And his play over the 2 years that he had as Alabama starter really showed to me that he's ready for this step. He's no Mac Jones. And that's a compliment. I think the biggest thing is he knows how to make the best passes at the right time. And most importantly, playing this year, he played virtually injured for a good amount of the year. He was always hobbled, but he always was able. He didn't lose games last year. The only reason why Alabama had 2 losses last year was he got out-dueled on the road against Tennessee and on the road against LSU. And I think that's the only reasons why he lost those games. He is a natural winner, and he plays in what has become a pro-style offense in Alabama. Alabama now has literally almost the same facilities as a mediocre NFL team does, or a bottom-level NFL team does. So I think Bryce Young has the ability to step into the next level. Is he the best quarterback that we've seen in generations? Absolutely not. I think the 5'1", 204 pounds is red flag. We could talk about how small he is. We could talk about all of this stuff. The biggest worry is people in the NFL get injured much quicker than they used to. And I think the first time he gets hit in division against defenses like the Saints, defenses like the Bucks, those defenses are still pretty decent, he could easily get injured, and then you need a backup plan. And Carolina is not the greatest situation to go to. I do like the fact that they made the switch over to Frank Reich. This is at least somebody that'll help Bryce Young develop. And yes, you're in the right division. New Orleans is favored next year, but I don't think they're any better than a 9-win team with what they have right now. So this is the right move for Carolina. Bryce Young is the right quarterback in this class. I think he is the best quarterback in this class. The slight frame, again, is a weakness. He needs a little bit better pocket arm strength, but honestly, he is the most solid quarterback in this draft. And when quarterbacks are king, he is the guy who is going to take the throne for this year. He has limited physical traits, but his intangibles are as good as any quarterback that could probably be in the NFL right now, who's in like the mid-tier. So good for Carolina. They don't have to do the revolving Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield door that they did last year. That was embarrassing. And anything in the Matt Rule era was actually embarrassing. But now at least Carolina has a good foundation to build on. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot else, and they need a lot of work at other positions because they traded away their best wide receiver to get the quarterback. How did that work? But in this case, guys, I think Bryce Young is probably the best you can do at that spot.
Look, the thing is his height and his build is going to be, I don't say held against him, but it's going to be the thing, until his performance on the field changes it. And there are plenty of quarterbacks who have been tagged with that label, who have gone on to change, people's minds just by what they do on the football field. And you guys know how much I hate the whole, combine stuff, and just look at the film. This is a guy who, the big thing that stands out with me about Bryce Young is his ability to process and make decisions. He played in Bill O'Brien's offense, is an NFL level offense. Okay. He put Bryce Young in situations where he had to make full field reads. It's not like he's just locked on his first read. He scans the field and he goes through his progressions. And there are very few quarterbacks, even at the highest level in college football, who come into the NFL with that skill set as refined as Young has it. The thing I was looking at his film, and one of the things that jumped out at me, there's a play against Tennessee, scores tied 49-49 late in the fourth quarter. Young needed to get Bama into field goal range. So before the snap, he used his cadence to get the defense to show its hand. And after seeing the safety rotation and how the linebackers moved, he knew a blitz was coming to his right, slid his protection in that direction. And despite the blitz, he knew he was protected, used a little bit of a pump fake to get both underneath defenders to jump the short route, opening up space for the deeper in-breaking route behind it, which he converted, obviously, and, they went on to win. Another play, this time against Texas, he was down 6 in the fourth quarter. Alabama winds up in an empty backfield as running back Jamar Gibbs lines up out wide. Offense appears to have called a stick draw concept, in which Young has to read the linebacker and, determine whether he wants to throw the stick route or run a quarterback draw. The linebacker left the box to defend the stick route, so Young made the right decision to run. The defensive tackles for Texas did a job of closing the running lanes. Young had to improvise. Gibbs saw his quarterback in trouble, worked to get open. Soon as Young got his eyes up and saw Gibbs, he quickly set up, threw to Gibbs in the back of the end zone, touchdown, game over. And this is what makes Young special. His processing speed allows him to be able to react quickly what he's seeing, play without any hesitation, and make these sorts of plays without putting the ball in harm's way. And it's a high level of mastery to achieve, but he's shown he can reach it. That's Drew Brees level stuff we're talking about. And if he can replicate that, he's going to be just fine.
Well, as we'll talk about, there is comparisons to him and the now number 2 quarterback picked in the draft, which we'll get to momentarily. But Anthony, by the way, one thing about Bryce Young, that was the best game I've ever seen him play in college. And I think that was number 1. The Texas game.
The Texas game?
Yeah, that was the best game, I think. That's the game you're talking about. The game that he's the last quarterback to beat Georgia. And that game, he basically took what he did from the film and killed them. So we're going to talk a lot about quarterbacks today, but I think Bryce Young has all the mechanics, Anthony, to be on the next level. You've seen a lot of Alabama over the years, and I think he is the first ever Alabama quarterback to go number 1. And I think it is rightfully so, considering the pedigree that he gained in his 2 years as starter.
Yeah, you think about it like this, in 2021, he was basically All-American SEC Offensive Player of the Year. And that was 15 starts and 47 touchdown passes last year. You mentioned that Texas game, and one of the things that was listed among his strengths is his calm demeanor on the field. The playing a post-style offense gives him a big advantage of some of the other quarterbacks going to see this weekend in the draft, but also his ability to just process the defense. I think that was such a key late-night game against Texas, because remember, he was getting beat up for most of that afternoon. That was probably as bad as an offensive day I have seen out of any Nick Saban-led Alabama team in a very long time. And the fact that he was able to, especially late in that fourth quarter, to pick up what Texas was doing, find a blitzer almost immediately, particularly when they would come off that quarter blitz, being able to get out of the pocket. He made Texas pay big time. When he scrambled, he was able to stem plays to get receivers open. We saw it again late in the season as well. So he knows how to operate has a great release, a quick, fast, compact release, a la Drew Brees, because that's a guy that I always looked at, a small quarterback who takes advantage of where he can't really see over the offensive line, his whole offensive line, the passing windows that he's looking towards. and that allows him to see his receivers downfield, and he's able to get rid of the ball very quickly. He his pocket mobility and his awareness in the pocket when it comes to pass rushes, I think really stands out about Bryce Young. There is the thing though about his size and being somewhat undersized for a quarterback. He was just in the scouting combine at 204. I think he's 207 right now. And you do worry about
big weight gain.
Yeah, it's a 3-pound weight. Yeah, it's a big weight, it's big gain difference. But you do worry about with a quarterback that's that small, any football player that small, the durability, because they're going to take hits. The professional level, the guys are bigger, they're faster, they're a lot stronger now. And you see, even with the rules protecting quarterbacks still taking big hits. And you do wonder what happens when that first big hit does impact him, and he's not expecting it. How he's going to bounce up and recover from it. Those are some key things. Another one too is that he sometimes leaves the receiver on those seam passes. He kind of leaves him too far close to the sideline and basically throws the ball out of bounds. So that's something he's going to have to work on, especially if you're going to play in Carolina. Where you like to think you want to take a few shots downfield. So that's one of the few things you kind of look at. But other than that, all the other pluses outweigh the minuses by a large margin. It'd be nice if he can sit for a year and maybe learn the old-fashioned way. But in today's NFL, you know that's not going to happen. It's going to be thrown to the fire right away. But it's going to be interesting to see if he does play right away, how quickly he's going to be able to adjust to the pro game level. Being a pro-style offense helps, but then he wasn't always playing against a pro-style defense every week too. So that's going to be the biggest adjustment for Bryce Young.
Yeah, again, the right division for him to be in, Joe. We made fun of the Panthers organization a lot over the last 12 months. They're going in the right direction. That's all I'm going to say. But I think Bryce Young definitely helps steer that direction at least a little forward.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna trade up to take the number 1 pick to take a quarterback, this is the guy you take in this draft. The next guy from Ohio State, you all know my feelings about those guys. They kind of fake numbers. Richardson wasn't worth the first pick, either was Levis or any of those guys. So if you were going to move up in this draft, which is what they did to get a quarterback, to get the number 1 quarterback, they picked the right guy.
All right, let's move on to CJ Stroud, which I was going to get to anyway, but we're trying to at least make sure that we can get to these picks before, after they're being picked. All right. The Houston Texans had a head coach that basically tried in the last game to win. Whoops. That gave the Houston Texans the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. And how did they handle that? Despite all of the talk of them trading out, finding another position player, they do get their man. The consensus number 2 pick in the draft, according to many, CJ Stroud of Ohio State. Jay, as a Michigan fan, you've seen a lot of Stroud and hurled 400 bombs at him every single time that you've seen him make plays.
Yeah.
How is he going to make it in 2023 under D'Amico Ryans in the new regime?
You know, I'm not going to, all I'm going to do is tell you guys from my own eye test. And Joe's right, you know, talking about how prolific Ohio State's offense is and, how he's thrown the guys that he's thrown to. I mean, just last year alone, the guys that he threw to could be the best receivers he ever throws to in his career. But, that could change. Who knows? Houston could, kind of do better. You never know. This is a team that is starting over. But the thing that I noticed, is that it didn't matter. I wasn't so much, I mean, even if guys are getting open and, against Michigan, it was harder to get open. But you still, even if guys are getting open as often as they did in that offense, you still have to put the ball in the right place where these guys can, make big plays afterwards. And, the first thing that jumps out at me on Stroud's film is his accuracy and his ability to hit wide receivers in stride. He doesn't have what you would call elite arm strength. He's, he doesn't have Anthony Richardson's cannon, but he does have a strong arm and he can make every throw without issue. He's especially good with trajectory control, putting just enough air on throws to get it over the defenders at all three levels. He diagnoses defenses well, and he looks to do an excellent job of eliminating options based on his pre-snap reads. His feet are clean, they're efficient, he doesn't have any footwork issues, and he looks to always be in control. Granted, having the protection he had at Ohio State does seem to make that a little easier. And he doesn't lose much accuracy under pressure. Not that he saw a lot of it till he faced Georgia. And he does throw very well off platform. He has the ability to quickly reset his feet within the pocket. So as he moves from side to side, making his progressions, he's constantly resetting his feet and make the perfect touch, throw over and underneath defender and away from the trailing man defender. His tape has a ton of these types of throws. On the flip side, he doesn't make many turnover-worthy throws. Most of his interceptions have come when he's overconfident in his ability to get the ball over defenders with touch. He's going to have to keep an eye on that because we all know that throwing windows in the NFL are a lot smaller. And based on the throwing windows he had at Ohio State, they're going to seem microscopic. But overall, creating outside of structure isn't a big part of his game. Earlier this past season, when he played out of structure, he didn't seem to have much success, which led to questions about whether he could be, that dynamic type of NFL quarterback that they're starting to look for these days. Answered those questions in the big way against Georgia in the CFP. And of course, teams would have loved to have seen it more throughout his career, but for him to do it on a stage against that type of a defense with that much talent opened a lot of eyes, including mine. Look, he has the highest floor of quarterbacks in this draft, in my opinion. Doesn't have a single tier 1 physical trait, but he does have the full set of tools you want in a quarterback and a very high football IQ. Should be able to play and produce early in his career if he's drafted in the right situation. And you guys know how I feel about quarterbacks being in the right situation in terms of fit to offensive scheme. The prevailing opinion in terms of NFL comps for Stroud range between a more athletic Derek Carr and Dak Prescott. If the playmaker that we saw against Georgia was an outlier, then the comp is more like Carr, great at making calls, adjusting before the snap at the line of scrimmage with flashes of aggression and arm talent. If the playmaker we saw against Georgia is a skill he always had, but didn't previously need or have to show based on the Buckeyes offense and the opponents they play, then the comp is more like Prescott, a top-flight quarterback with the mental side of the game who can make plays with his legs when the opportunity arises. I see him as close to a scheme-neutral quarterback as there is in this draft, though a smart offensive coordinator, looking at you, Bobby Slowick, will tailor his scheme to what Stroud does best while helping him develop the skills to overcome the things he currently does not. I like the pick for the Texans.
Geez, if the Texans can only get some more draft picks for them in the draft.
Oh, but
Anthony,
wait.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that in just a moment. Anthony, before we get to pick number 3, is CJ Stroud the right pick at number 2?
I like to pick for the Texans because right now they are literally in rebuild mode under new head coach Ryan. And when you look at CJ Stroud, I mean, he checks out all the positives as far as the prototypical pocket quarterback, a guy who can get the ball downfield. He does have a great arm, but a good arm. Just not forget, not just the offensive line he had at Ohio State, the weapons he had to work with also was plentiful as well. So that definitely always helped. One of my concerns with Stroud is that when he struggled is when Danes did not stay on schedule as far as our offense is concerned. And also, Jay, you think back to Michigan, one of the things he had a problem with that defense was picking up the safeties. Like there were plenty of passes thrown over the middle, even in the double coverage, but it looked like he did not see a safety dropping back in the coverage or even a linebacker.
There were a couple of occasions. Yeah.
Yes, so you do wonder as far as picking up zone coverages and picking up pre-snap reads, how quickly he's going to adjust to that, because if he can't do that, he's going to struggle big time because he's going to be seeing things that he thinks he's seeing pre-snap, and then when he's in the ball finally snap, does something totally different. He has to do a better job of being able to use his legs. I mean, he was very hesitant to run in certain situations when he did have an opportunity to run out of the pocket and maybe pick up some yards, some cheapy yards, get out of bounds, slide, get himself up, whatever the case may be. And Jay, you know this. I have mentioned this. There's a little bit of Roethlisberger when the holding the ball too long, you're taking unnecessary hits and you don't necessarily need to be taken. He's going to have to get that out of his system immediately. But when you look at some of his strengths, he showed the willingness to stand and he does have the willingness to stand, make plays. He made great progress. He's one of the best pump fakes that I've seen in college football. Also, so that's definitely going to help. It reminds me of Chad Pennington. When he was able to get his pump fake, and he was one of the better flashing quarterbacks because he was very deceptive with hiding the football. But his accuracy is pretty good too. Like I say, he doesn't have the greatest arm, but a good arm. He can get the passes to his receivers. Yeah. He need to work on leading his receivers and throwing his receivers open a little bit. But like I say, he's going to be a work in progress year one. It's going to be more about how much can he progress before we even start thinking about whether or not he's going to be a good long-term quarterback after year one and year two.
Yeah, I mean, I said he has the best floor coming in. It's a question of, how high does his ceiling ultimately get to be? And again, it's dependent on, he's probably going to look worse his rookie year if he starts. And again, there's no guarantee that he has to start. Davis Mills was a serviceable NFL quarterback. So they don't necessarily have to throw him into the fire right off the bat. But I mean,
they do have to see what they have, but they do have to see what they have in him year one. I think that's an obvious thing.
Okay.
See. Joe, make fun of an Ohio State guy before we
Again, if in the old way of thinking, because that's what I am, I don't think it's the right pick to go out and grab a quarterback in the top of this draft if you're Houston, but again, you're probably given, even though DeMeco Ryans is a brand new coach, he's probably only got 3 years to figure it out before he's going to get fired too. So, that's the problem. You don't have 5, 6, 8, 10 years to build a team anymore. I think there's so many holes on that team that going to pick a quarterback that may be good, may not be good. Of course, the next guy that just got picked is even a worse pick, but we'll get into that.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Talking about Stroud, like you said, the thing that makes Ohio State quarterbacks good and productive is running games and offensive linemen and great receivers. He doesn't have any of those things going in. Nope. So why not build something before you bring in that guy? Because again, this isn't the strongest quarterback class. The fact that we're going, these guys are good, they're this, they're that. This isn't like this is the obvious top 2 guys that are going to lead this league for the next 10 years. I would have gone somewhere else, but that's just the way I think.
Jeez. The Texans actually did go somewhere else, because from the Texans at 2, we move on to the Texans at 3. Yeah, they traded with the Arizona Cardinals from the number 3 pick. Here's the details. They gave up the Texans pick today at number 12. That was their next pick. Their first pick tomorrow. That's the first pick in the second round. And a first and third in 2024. The price is moving up 10 spots in the NFL draft. And they went to take on another good old Saban boy, Will Anderson Jr., a linebacker, Alabama. Anthony, thank God you watched a lot of Alabama this year. So the Texans have the draft capital to get their man and then get their man again. Is Anderson worth all of that?
Yeah, well, it helps to live in a home where when your parents is a Crimson Tide fan. That always helps. But Anderson, you look at his SEC All Freshman, 13 games. Obviously, he started for the then national champions at the time, 52 tackles, 10.5 for a loss of 7 sacks. And this past season, 17.5 sacks. Minus 102 total stops. SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Strait's proportional build, excellent arm strength. He's an edge rusher. That is something that I would think DeMeco Ryans would love to have if he's going to build this team, and he is a defensive first guy. He's an edge rusher who can get off the corner really fast. Very couple hands. He can use his hands. He reminds a little bit of DeMarcus Ware, and I say that because I saw plenty of him when he was with the Cowboys. Beating up Eli Manning for a number of years in the NFC East. And one of the things, and Joe, I know you're gonna chime in. I see you ready to go. One of the things is he does have a quick first step. He does get off the line of scrimmage very well. But one of the things is one of the question marks is his motor, and that was one thing that was a question mark when he was in Alabama. Is he motivated? Can he keep it up, play at a high level every play? He's a little undersized as well, so that's going to be interesting to see. But when you look at the Texans, and well, Anderson Jr. fits better is that he's a hybrid player who can play 4-3 or 3-4. So you can plug him in either one of those schemes. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think he can make an immediate impact because the Texans just don't have much else going on for themselves. The team was a complete mess anyway. But of the two picks who can make the quickest impact, it'd be Anderson because he can start right away on defense. Whereas Stroud, you'd rather him hold a clipboard in year one to get the opportunity to do so.
If you can,
but,
yeah.
But Will Anderson, I mean, look, the Texans are a team that has to be built from top to bottom. They got the foundation built on offense. They traded up with Arizona. They got the foundation piece on defense. I know Joe probably more likely disagrees with this pick. So I'm really interested to see what I'm really interested to see what he has to say because I know he's ready to chime in.
No. The only thing
not this pick, Joe. I feel like this is a pick that's right up your alley.
Yeah, no, I like this pick a lot. I thought I would have gone 2 with him and then see what happened at 3 if you're going to move up. I thought that the only thing I didn't like was the cowboy bias of DeMarcus Ware, who again never won anything, but we make this guy out.
Well, yeah, to be fair, he at least got to win something, but he's a Cowboy, so it's a problem.
It's like everybody has to use a cowboy just because they're, always on TV and stuff. That, there are a lot of other guys. There are guys like Justin Tuck and things that you could probably, OCU Manura. There's a lot of guys out there, Strahan, that you can compare guys to. We always seem to do it to a cowboy, and that's not us. I'm saying you hear about it on all these other shows and stuff.
Well, I mean, Joe, they're America's team, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's never won. The American team that's never won anything
right now. How? For God's sake, I hate talking about the NFL draft as is. I mean, there's all of this great playoff action going on, and now we're back to cowboy bashing. It's not September. Calm down.
Joe, I would give you Umanora because Umanora was definitely a speed rusher. Justin Tuck to me was more of a power rusher, a guy who can use his upper body strength. Because especially when he was outside the edge, and when he lined over center. And that NASCAR package. So I always looked at him more of a power rusher. Yeah. If you're gonna use a giant comparison, Umanora kind of fits this guy definitely.
I'm just trying to get us to open the encyclopedia a little bit further than the Troy Aikman and Tony Romo bring up all the time. So.
Yeah, what's interesting.
Yeah, I do think what you see with Anderson though is a decently high ceiling, but a very high floor. Like, there's a very little chance for him to flame out in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony's right. You're going to plug and play. What'll be interesting to see is, D'Amico Ryans is bringing the San Francisco defense, which is a base 4-3. So the question to me is, are you looking at him as, to fill the Joey Bosa role, or are you looking at him as more like, the elephant role as an outside linebacker who occasionally may drop down in passing situations? I think he's a 3-down player. I think he's pretty much scheme proof. He has plenty of sideline to sideline speed. He has a really good motor. It appeared to wane at times, but Alabama blew so many people out. You can understand if he's taking a play off here or there. The thing for me on him is, he needs to develop counters to his existing pass rush moves, because if you guys remember, I talked about the Tennessee game with Bryce, but if you remember from the other side of the ball, Tennessee, Darnell Wright, their right tackle, who is expected to be one of the, the first bunch of group alignment off the board tonight. Wright's length and power gave Anderson some issues. So, he still has to develop a counter to a well-timed hand punch from an outside tackle. But I mean, I think, he can hunt down running backs in pursuit. He, from the backside, we all know he's for the quarterback. Great athletic ability. I think this is a good pick. And if you got to start somewhere, I'm not going to compare him to JJ, who is to me that's the gold standard of defensive player for the Houston Texans. But you know what? Not a bad place to start. I like the pick for them.
Yeah, he's got the hardware to show it. Big Lyric Award, Lombardi Award winner. And also look at this. When you was a running back, you played the Texans last season. It was Christmas come early because no team was as bad on defense and stopping a run is the Texans. So his ability to stop the run is definitely going to help. It's what's going to lead to him being an every down player, especially right out of the gate for the Texans.
And you get to appease the management by getting the quarterback, and you get to appease the new head coach by getting the linebacker. I love doing this show. I don't have to talk at all. It's amazing because all of you guys do the talking for me. Finally, to finish off our top four, if there's a team that's been crying for a change under center after the Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan experiment failed again miserably, it's the Indianapolis Colts. So for the first pick in 2023, they picked their quarterback of the future? And a man who screams project. And we're sorry to Issa Petrilli, University of Florida alum. Go Miami Heat. Actually, no. Sorry. No go Miami Heat. We're respected, but no go Miami Heat. Go New York, go New York, go. All right. The pick was Anthony Richardson from the University of Florida at number 4. Joe, considering you said he is one of the worst quarterbacks of this draft, and again, project screamed all over him. I don't think this is what you would have done, and this is not what I would have done.
No, again, new coach, you start over again. You do have a decent running game, but they were just so bad the last couple of years, and this isn't going to get any better. And not that, again, I don't have anything against the kid. It's just that he's just one of these flash in the pans. He makes some big throws on TV. The game that actually everyone points to that he threw 3 touchdown passes in and won the game, and everybody goes, "Oh, did you see how strong his arm is? And you see the throws made?" He was 7 for 21 against the college team. 7 for 21. So again, when he starts seeing different defenses and he's going to start seeing pressures, you can throw the ball up. He's a lot like Kyler Murray, to tell you the truth. I can throw the ball up in the air 80 yards while I'm running around almost out of bounds, and somebody might catch it. And that's the highlight of the year because with such a great play. Well, it's one game. You didn't do anything. You made it to the playoffs against the Rams and you got destroyed. So this is just not a pick that's going to sustain this team for any period of time. And again, if you have somebody else there, you have Gardner Minshew, that's it. That's all they have on their roster at this point is Gardner Minshew. So
don't even mention somebody, Anthony.
If he was picked behind, Rodgers or something, that's fine. And you're going to have the guy learn for a while for 3 or 4 years because that's what it's going to take. But you can't throw this guy on the field day one and expect anything from him except a few highlight plays, which is exactly what you got from a Zach Wilson, which is exactly what you get from a Sam Darnold. Just a few highlight plays here and there that make you think he can play the position, but this is bad to take this guy in the top 5 and have to pay him like a top 5 player.
Agreed.
I think, guys, it's just Indianapolis trying a new thing and just kind of like Jim Irsay throwing his balls into the lottery ball machine and hoping his lucky number pops up. Yeah. That's all I'm saying, Anthony. But continue on.
Rabbi, you want to dissect Anthony Richardson here or a little later on?
You want to dissect Anthony Richardson later on? That's perfectly fine. I think right now, like I said, this is Anthony. I'll go to you quickly, and then we can kind of leave Jay's stuff for later on. Anthony Richardson did have some highlight reel plays in Florida, and his stock is definitely combine enhanced to the point where it is now. But again, it shows exactly where the NFL quarterback is today.
Yeah, you look at some of his highlight reels. He ran for touchdowns of 45, 60, 73, 80, and 81 yards over the last 2 seasons. And the comparison you're going to have is Cam Newton. He's almost literally a carbon clone. When you think about his size, strength, and athleticism, and ability to run the football, but then there's the backside of the Cam Newton comparisons. His inconsistency with throwing the football, he can be very erratic and inaccurate at times, as Joe pointed out. The fact that he got pitched so high, I think, actually hurts Richardson, because now a high pick comes with some really unrealistic expectations for a guy who seriously has some more season to go if you want to go that route. He needs to develop a little more. And I thought he would have been drafted a little lower in the first round, maybe even late first round. That would have helped Richardson as far as the expectations coming in. But when you go to a top 5 and go into a close team that, let's face it, really hasn't recovered from Andrew Luck unexpectedly retiring on them in the middle of preseason
the wrong way about
4 or 5 years ago.
The one thing I'll say,
gone the wrong way about it. That's really it. That's exactly what they've done. And as we move on, because I want to get to all of the Aaron Rodgers stuff, and again, we'll save some more Anthony Richardson scouting reports for Jay in a little while. I just think that Indianapolis is just trying a lot of new things. And the one thing that a staff needs for him is patience. And I don't think Jim Irsay has that, because he's always red-faced 100% of the time. So let's move on.
I will say this, Rabbi. If he gives as much credence to Peyton Manning's opinion as supposedly he said, then I got to question this pick. I'll get into Anthony Richardson, the film study I did on him later. But the thing is you just on the surface of it, Richardson just does not seem to be the quarterback you would expect Frank Reich to have running his offense. Just saying.
Well, Frank Reich is in Carolina, so he's not.
Sorry, you're right. My bad. You're right. My bad.
The Philadelphia offensive
coordinator. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. My head's in the right place. Yeah. With Shane striking, it might actually make a little more sense, but we'll get it.
A decent amount of more sense considering.
We'll get into that later.
We'll get into that in a moment. All right. So let's talk about, before we talk about the Jets and the Giants draft strategies, let's talk about the Jets' new quarterback. It waited a long time. There was a lot of negotiations. I heard they brought in the UN for all of this because Woody Johnson does have the people to do it. But at the end, Aaron Rodgers is now a New York Jet. They did have to trade picks this year, give up another pick this year, and then give up what will possibly be a first-round pick next year. It's a conditional second-round pick if Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps. And Aaron Rodgers got introduced yesterday as the newest New York Jets. I'll go to Joe for this one first, and then we'll kind of go around the horn here really quickly. Joe, is Aaron Rodgers ready to succeed in this town? The goalposts, as you said, have been moved a little bit. And what is success for him in year one? Is there a year two? Is really the other question I think a lot of people are asking.
Yeah, and that's, he didn't want to answer the question, and I get it, because that's just how he is. He wants to have all the talk surrounded about him again as he walks off the field at the end of the year, a loser with his arm around Alan Lazard, and then it all starts all over again. Is he coming back? Is he going to go away? How much time are they going to have to wait for him to make his decision? And I guess they're paying him a lot more money next year than they're paying him this year on his salary. So that's going to be a decision that they're going to have to live with and learn what it is. So I think that, again, he can't say, and nobody else can say, that this isn't all in or bust. I think this team, and again, to come into the AFC at this point with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, who just seem to be getting stronger, they pick up players like, they must not have a salary cap in Kansas City. And then they have Cincinnati, and you have Buffalo, and you have Miami, and you have all these top echelon teams, and we all know anything can happen in the playoffs to get knocked out. But again, they better find an offensive line for him, because he doesn't run as much as he used to. And I think that that's going to be important for him. he doesn't really have a great receiving core now, and they're not done yet. Again, we haven't really seen how things have come there. Hopefully the running back comes back from injury, but he can't pretend like this isn't a 1-year experiment of I'm going to come in and win the Super Bowl, because he was already going to retire, and he's not, this isn't, I think you said it to me the other day, Rabbi, about talking about, people complain, comparing him to Tom Brady and moving and his age and that kind of stuff. But Brady had won a lot at that point. Brady had already won 5 Super Bowls. The guy is a success. The guy won how many division titles, had won all this stuff. Beating up on Minnesota and Chicago doesn't tell me how great a quarterback he is or a great winner that he is, that he was only able to win the 1 championship. And he's lost a lot of games at home. He's lost a lot of places. So weather's not going to bother him, but and the fans will be 100% behind him until they lose 3 in a row. And then the questions will start. And his answer of, oh, relax, everybody, it'll be okay.
That's not going to play in the New York media. Not with this fan base.
Because he hasn't done it here yet. It worked in Green Bay because there were years where they lost a few games and then they came back and won the division because, again, beating Chicago and Minnesota is no big deal. Once you start getting into this and it changes a little bit, and again, if you think about what Rodgers' strengths are, it's not only his accuracy, obviously, and his strong arm, but getting guys to jump off sides, right? Getting too many men on the field on the other team. Couple of different ideas there that he does, that now he's got a brand new offensive line. He's got a brand new team. And you've seen younger players in the NFL, like we saw with Dallas, think that they can jog back to the line after a play, no hustle back. He's going to have to really take over this team. And the thought process that he didn't have to be there for preseason because his offensive coordinator was going to be there. He has to become Peyton Manning and take over this team and teach everybody position and teach everybody where they are. And he's going to have to stay late at practice and say, no, we're going to run it again. We're going to run it again. He has to do that. And I don't know if he has it. He's not that kind of personality. I don't know if he has that in him to grab a team like this and calm them all down. Sauce Gardner had a great year, but you better do it again. I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't want to hear anything. He has to be that guy that stands up there. He has to be the new sheriff in town and say, this is how we do things. This is how we practice. This is how I do things.
I think it's different, though, as Joe has to feed the dog. So he's going to take a little bit of a few minutes away from here. I think it's a little bit different, though. I think people are already going to respect him. He might have too much power. I mean, for God's sakes, they signed Alan Lazard, who is basically one of Rodgers' safety that's a month and a half before Rodgers was even in the building. So I think a lot of these players are going to listen to Rodgers, Jay. It's just really a question of, does it make them, where does it make them? I think it makes them a playoff team, but I don't know where else after that.
I mean, Rabbi, I understand some folks saying that, whatever the Jets gave up to get a likely first ballot Hall of Famer as QB1 was worth it. But I'm not sure I agree. Yes, Rodgers is an automatic upgrade at the NFL's most important position. And the numbers he put up last year and what for him was a down year, only 3,695 passing yards, career low for any season in which he played at least 15 games. Only 26 TD passes, tied for second fewest in a season where he played at least 15 games. 12 interceptions, the most in his career outside of his first season in 2008. That all those numbers still would have qualified as one of the best seasons ever by any Jets quarterback in the history of the team. All that being said, Rodgers has become as mercurial a personality as there in the NFL. You never know where his head is at, and you never know if he's going to want to play from one season to the next. He turns 40 in December and has seriously contemplated retirement over the past 2 off seasons. So it's valid to believe it will happen again a year from now. As one NFL executive put it, and here's the quote, Rodgers is a descending player who didn't want to be with the Packers and will probably retire this year if things don't go well. I can see this blowing up in the Jets' faces. Look, this is not the first time the Jets have traded for a 39-year-old Packers quarterback. Did it in 2008, trading for Brett Favre as Green Bay made room for a 25-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Trade didn't come together until August, and it cost the Jets a whole lot less. Just a conditional 4th-round pick. That went well, and then it didn't, and the didn't was bad. And if the Jets have to turn around and go looking for another quarterback in a year or even 2 years, they'll have less draft capital to use to build around that quarterback, regardless of whether they get a veteran who is already in the league or draft a rookie. The Jets are also set to inherit Rodgers' $58.3 million option, which could be spread out of over 2 years in terms of cap hits, $15.79 million in 23, $32.54 million in 24. But all that's going to impact their ability to add players around Rodgers. Look, Rodgers had to deal with his issues on his offensive line in Green Bay, which is also a rather large issue for the Jets right now. Pro Football Focus graded them 29th in pass blocking, 27th in run blocking last year. They lost depth when Nate Herbring and Dan Feeney left via free agency. Rodgers also dealt with injuries to his right thumb in week 5 that he played through, and an injury to his ribs that he suffered in week 12 that sidelined him for a quarter. Are those indications of a pattern of him becoming injury prone as an older quarterback? Look, the Jets have a decent wide receiver room with Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, old friend Alan Lazard, as we noted, and former Chief Mecole Hardman, and hopefully running back Breece Hall is 100%, at least by opening day. And look, Rodgers may not return to his MVP level, but if he's healthy with a more stable situation and an attractive cast of young standouts, it doesn't have to be to elevate the Jets to playoff contenders. But here's the thing. Even if the Jets' young skill position players take their game to the next level with Rodgers directing the offense, even if everyone stays healthy, even if the pass protection becomes solid, even if the defense remains at last season's level, which was elite, and even if new offensive coordinator and old pal Nathaniel Hackett does a better job in the Meadowlands than he did in the Mile High, it still doesn't guarantee a playoff berth in what is an already stacked AFC. And if the Jets gave all of this draft capital up and incurred this much of a cap hit and still come up short, or don't even get out of the wild card round next year, or 2 if the wind blows the right way in Rodgers' mind, then I'm sorry, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And considering the historic impatience of a certain Jets owner could result not only in a reset at quarterback, but coach and GM as well.
Historic impatience? I think they've been impatient since 1970. That's just me. I don't think they're ready to do another rebuild. So historic impatience after the season that they had and the ending that they had is perfectly fine by me. Anthony, a lot of moving parts with the New York Jets next year. They're going to get the games. They're going to get the headlines. Are they going to get the wins?
Well, when you look at the Jets, they were in the playoff fight until the second to last week of the season until it all bombed out in Seattle. You remember that game? Like the triplets of Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, and Mike White just wasn't getting it done. When you have a defense that allowed just 18 points a game, and even have a wide receiver in Garrett Wilson who somehow managed to get 1,100 yards receiving, when he basically didn't have a quarterback to speak of. But the Jets had the defense. They had a great the rush attack early season before Breece Hall was injured. Aaron Rodgers stepped into a situation where he doesn't have to be the Aaron Rodgers of old. He just need to do enough. And that was something we saw with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. I mean, that was a team getting away from the Jameis Winston era. And they unfortunately eat enough W's, to say the least. Tom Brady came in, he was more of a he was more of a he wasn't the Tom Brady we saw throwing a Randy Moss or Russ Welker when the Patriots to steamroll opponents. He was more of a game manager. He hit the shots downfield. He played to what the team strength was, and he was able to more importantly take care of the football more than anything, and he had a sound defense to back him up. I think that's the situation that Aaron Rodgers, I feel the Jets hoping to step into. He does. JSP has mentioned it. He has a very mercurial personality. And look, I didn't think the trade was true because I didn't hear Pat McAfee bring it up. And we know that's his official PR guy. But when you look at Aaron Rodgers and you look at the fact that his worst season was still better than any Jet quarterback that we can think over the
franchise more than anything else.
Over the last decade, says a lot about the Jets' misfortunes at quarterback. And you look at it like this offense. 17 points a game. The defense only allowed 18. That's how bad the offense was. 29th in the NFL. They a turnover differential of -7. And you wonder, the Jets probably would be a playoff team had they had a stable quarterback with 1 or 2 more wins. When you think about the Miami Dolphins getting in on the last week of the season in a game nobody could do anything offensively. So yeah,
let me
I
stop
mean,
right there before we get some more, so we can get some more Jet stuff here. Very few teams were 1 quarterback away. I'm just going to say that. And the Jets were the definition last year of a quarterback away more than any team that I've seen in a long time. Best case scenario is Brett Favre 2009 when he went to the Minnesota Vikings and turned a middling team to the team that was 1 drive away from a Super Bowl appearance. Worst case scenario, the Jets in 2008, and he ends up missing the playoffs and almost embarrassingly losing on the final day to the old quarterback that they got rid of. So that's the key, and I can't believe 15 years later, not saying it's a bad move, not saying it's a good move, but I can't believe 15 years later, the Jets are now following the same script again.
I would say this for Aaron Rodgers. Sometimes you live long enough to become the villain. And him and Brett Favre famously did not get along, and he's literally following in the footsteps of the guy he one time did not get along with whatsoever. So this thing called irony is such a rich, grand thing that the sports guys every once in a while gotta give themselves a laugh out like the Three Stooges. So just seeing this whole thing play out with the Jets in a case of deja vu. I mean, for me anyway, it's gonna be good popcorn and good entertainment. But when you look at the fact that they could have easily made the playoffs with no quarterback to speak of, it's like, okay, maybe Aaron Rodgers is good enough to get them 1 or 2 more victories with a defense and a healthy running back.
At least. So that means also Aaron Rodgers is allegedly going to move to Mississippi and possibly do some defrauding. But again, that's all alleged. All right. Guys, we need to move on. Let's talk about the New York Jets themselves and their draft strategy. This offseason has been spent finding all of the pieces to fit around the form of Aaron Rodgers, who just signed this week. They got a superstar. They got a man to lead them to the promised land. But now the 7-10 Jets have themselves a draft to help build. So they're now at number 15. They only have 5 picks in the entire draft. I believe I think it was still 3 in the top 100. But guys, starting with Anthony, what should the Jets do? And if you can give me a player, give it to me. What should the Jets do this weekend in Kansas City? Who should they draft? What should be their need?
I think
who's your first round pick, Anthony? Who are you taking at 15?
Who should be their draft and what should be their need? Please let me know. If you have a name, give it to me.
Well, I think they absolutely have to start up front in the offensive line. And a guy that comes to mind to me is from Georgia, Broderick Jones. And, look at a 6'5", 311 guy, former high school basketball player, very athletic, started all 15 games at left tackle for Georgia. His versatility and his ability to be able to play left or right side is a big bonus as far as being able to plug him in any tackle position. He's got some of his strengths, drives hands into the defender with an upward strike, whips outside hands through pass to corral and move opponents. If you got a running game, if you got a guy like Breece Hall who operates very well out in space, you like the idea of having a tackle who can move guys out of the way as if he's a Ford pickup truck, to say the least. Body control to adjust to moving targets, length necessary to improve punch timing, possesses loose hip, quick feet for recoveries, which is a good thing because it just gave up a lot of sacks. And once Breece Hall got hurt, the running game kind of disappeared also. But very talented at working in the space to land that block and help spring the running game. Nimble feet to mirror over cover against the rush. Shows he's not a finished product, as to say the least, but the physical and athletic gifts allow for a projection as a good long-term starter. And last year we saw the Jets up front definitely having their issues. Now you have an older quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who you probably don't want him scrambling and running around as much as he did in his Green Bay days. But you're gonna have to keep him right side up, and starting up front with the offensive line It's a start. The Bill Parcells Marshall, you build your team from the inside out, not the outside in. Solidifying the old line with a guy like Jones who can play both sides. I think it'd be a great start for the Jets, because right now you got the quarterback, you have the young talent, you had the defense this season without question. Now you got to start building a lineup on both sides of the football, but the offense, since you now have the quarterback, is a great place to start at number 15.
Jay, are we building from the inside, or are we doing a little something different for the Jets?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at, at the second round, and obviously a need for the Jets is defense, is along the defensive line. Quinnen Williams played a lot of snaps last year. They lost Sheldon Rankins. So I think you kind of got to, you got to rebuild there. And the guy I'm looking at is a guy I saw plenty of last season. That's Mozzie Smith, who's defensive tackle at Michigan. Smith is a guy that you can basically play, anywhere along the interior of a defensive front. He predominantly played, nose tackle in Jesse Minter's scheme at Michigan. Not a lot of backfield production in terms of sacks and tackles for losses. He only has half a sack for his career, but he was second on the team with pressures with 25 last year. He can handle double teams well. He can take single blockers to school. He's got great football instincts. And he feels blocking pressures. He can track the football. Does need to be a little more controlled with his finishes as a tackler. And he's never going to, light up the stat sheet. But I think he's an above average NFL run defender. He has pass rush potential. He has natural leverage, body quickness, and he's really strong. Like I said, he can play in multiple fronts, ideally suited as a shade guy in the middle of the line, similar in ways to a bigger Brandon McBain, if you will. I think he fits well here in terms of what they look to do. So, to me, I know he's a borderline late first, early second. I think he leans more towards early second. He had a little bit of some off-season issues. Pulled over for going 50 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone. They found a handgun and some magazines. The gun was legally purchased, didn't have his carry permit on him at the time. So his character isn't considered a red flag by most NFL scouts. But, that could be something that pushes him back into the second round, and he could be available at number 43 when the Jets are there. And if he is, I think it would be a good pick that fits a need that the Jets have.
Joe, what do you think as the Jets, again, they have the rookie of the year on both sides of the ball from last year, so I would consider that to be a pretty successful draft. What does Joe Douglas do this year at least in terms of need, if you have at least a spot that you think they should focus on?
Yeah, I think everybody agrees offensive line is key. I'm not sure there's too many plug and play guys left by the time they get there, but I would probably go, if I was going to draft for them in this first round, I think this draft is tight end deep. And that might be something that would be appealing to Aaron Rodgers. But also, if Rodgers misses 2 games, you got Zach Wilson playing quarterback. He's already been anointed the backup quarterback. And, you may have to play a few games with him. And just sitting around looking adoringly at Aaron Rodgers isn't going to make him a better quarterback. He's going to have to play a little bit. I'm sure he's going to play all the preseason games because Aaron Rodgers certainly isn't going to play in preseason.
Nope.
So
You're right.
I think if you went tight end, it wouldn't be the worst idea. Get a blocking tight end that also has some good hands. There's a couple of guys, the guy from Notre Dame. There's a couple of guys that wouldn't be a big reach at 15. And that's the only problem. But I think at this moment, the Jets have to draft for, again, forget best player available, forget working guys in. You've got, I say 1 year, Rabbi says 2 years to win a Super Bowl, and then you're done for another 50 years because you're trading everybody away. You're going to fire the coach. You're going to get rid of everybody. All this garbage is going to go on. Zach Wilson's going to be playing for somebody else. as a backup, just like Sam Darnold is. Sam Darnold by then will be on television. So I think that if they don't win it again, so I think you need to go need here at this point, which is if there's an offensive lineman that they feel can start right away, but I wouldn't make it a tackle. We got to be a little careful about doing that. But I think maybe tight end would be the way to go.
For God's sake, Sam Darnold is going to be starting for the San Francisco 49ers at one point next year, just because of the fact that everybody ends up starting for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to go Darnell Wright, by the way. I think offensive tackle is just the obvious answer to this, especially because the running game and protecting a 39-year-old quarterback is probably going to be something that's huge. And Darnell Wright of Tennessee is what we call a big boy in the terms of 333 pounds and has a 4-year frame. He is raw power tremendously. He decreased his penalties, by the way, from 10 to 2 last year, which is huge, especially as an offensive lineman. You can't bully a 333-pounder. And he has so much experience at multiple positions, and he played his last 3 years as a starter. I think it's a very good fit for the Jets. I think the offensive tackle spot, at least, is something that the Jets that's attainable for the New York Jets. And he might sacrifice his technique a little bit. He has a nasty demeanor, but he naturally defaults to his raw power. I think what you're going to see this year from the Jets has to come from that offensive line. They really have to build that team up to be a strong running team and then have Aaron Rodgers get them in the pass. I think if that happens, build on the San Francisco model. I mean, rumor has it they still have a San Francisco head coach in the room as their head coach. I think if you build on that San Francisco model, I think wins are going to come as long as you have the talent, and the Jets finally have that.
Well, Rabbi, they may have a San Francisco head coach, but they now have a Green Bay offensive coordinator. So
they do have a Green Bay offensive coordinator, and I think all of the Paul Hackett stuff, even name checking him, is kind of annoying to me because I don't think anybody should ever build their team off an offensive system or an offensive coordinator unless your offensive coordinator is a 1 in a million prospect. And as we've seen, Nathaniel Hackett is not that at all. All right. The Giants got some weapons in the offseason. They also re-signed their single caller Daniel Jones for the foreseeable future. The status of the franchise, Saquon Barkley, when it comes to signing his tender, though, still in doubt. We'll stay tuned on that as we continue on. But they have 10 picks in the draft, so the Giants got some work to do in 2023, and they can build up a team very nicely. Joe, what's the focus to look on to for Big Blue? And give me a name if you can.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have 10 picks, which I don't think they'll make all of them. I think they'll make a trade somewhere here. But they have 10 picks, which is a nice number to have some depth guys come in along the offensive line. I think they need some defensive help as in cornerbacks. I think they took care of the linebackers in free agency, and also they took care of defensive line in free agency. So I think if you can find some cornerbacks, find a safety somewhere down the line, because that's the spot where they kind of lost somebody. I think that's where they can go early. And then again, look for some athletic, again, I think Joe Judge said it best when he was like, it's not necessarily the big name wide receiver, number one guy. Let's find some guys that are a little bit under the radar. Let's find a Cooper Kupp type of guy, a possession guy, another guy to take over for, let's say, Sterling Shepard, who might get hurt again, who's been out for a while. I think that's where their focus is. They're not looking for the game-breaking wide receiver unless he's sitting there at 25. But I think that they're going to get some more athleticism in that room and then get another backup running back. But I think defensive backfield is where they should concentrate, and I think that's where they'll go.
I agree. I think there's still a lot of things that you can do to improve this team. This is not the most sexy draft on top, but there are some positions with a lot of depth. Anthony, there's a lot of ways we can go here, and Jay went the ultimate way, which we'll talk about in just a minute or two. But I can't think of. There's so many different positions here for the way that the Giants can go.
Yeah, I'm looking at later in the draft, not necessarily round one, because there was a number of ways they can go. One of the things I'm looking at is maybe adding some depth to the linebacking core. I mean, I don't know if you want to have Landon Collins coming out on the side of another situation where Landon Collins basically signed off the street to come in and play a weak side linebacker. Had to plug just to plug him in. I would like to see them try to add some more depth in the later rounds at linebacker, maybe in the second round. Think about the Giants' run defense. I mean, they were ranked 31st and gave up over 5 yards a carry. You think back to that nightmare playoff game against Philadelphia, they gave up 268 yards on the ground. And on a night with Jalen Hurts, who was always banged up, didn't have to do anything except say hike and hand the ball off and let his O-line and the running backs go to work. That's a couple of guys that I'm kind of looking at. If they drop down into round 2, that I think the Giants can help out. Drew Sanders from Arkansas, very versatile middle linebacker guy who I think can help out over the middle. And Trenton Simpson too, a guy who can from Clemson, a guy who could probably help out on the weak side. They need some speed in that linebacker position. So those are two individuals that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. If they're available in the second round when the Giants do pick, it would be nice to see them get one of those two guys. Maybe not, they may not be full-time starters right away unless an injury occur, but these are guys that can give them some depth, maybe definitely help them out the running game, give them some speed as far as covering running backs out of the backfield. That was an issue in the game last year against Detroit. And it's something that in the case of Simpson and these two guys, Simpson and Sanders, Wink Martindale plays a hybrid style defense where he changes his style all the time, depending on the opponent, and to have enough linebacker depth to where you can plug these guys in depending on opponents. I think that'd be a good thing. I mean, a guy like Martindale, who was very blitz happy, loves to get very creative with his blitz packages. I mean, if you give a guy like that some more toys to play with, it can only be a positive thing for the Giants. So I think round 2 and 3, the later rounds, is going to be where the Giants can possibly find some diamonds in the rough that can help that defense.
Yeah, but again, that seems to be one of the hardest things to do as a general manager. And considering the success of Brock Purdy this year, as we'll get to Jay right now, you now have as a general manager a duty to find a legitimate backup quarterback somewhere in the draft if you don't have one in the room. And you think the Giants should get a third quarterback in them?
Yeah, and look, you guys know, I rarely go this way when we're doing draft strategy. I usually like to look, day 2 pick, second round, third round, find a guy who, could be, if not a day 1 starter, a guy who's gonna by the mid to the end of the year is going to be part of a rotation at a position, whether it's along the lines or in one of the the offensive defensive backfield or whatever, be a bare minimum, be a situational type guy. This year I'm kind of gonna take a flyer. I'm gonna go this route, and I'm gonna say that the Giants have 3 picks in round 7. They have 1 in round 6. Why not take a flyer on a QB3? And my guy for this is Dorian, a guy I saw shred USC for 5 years, and that's Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA. So, I mean, look, here's the thing with him. I mean, I saw plenty. He passes my eye test. I mean, look, 5-year starter at UCLA. Showed steady improvement each season in Chip Kelly's balanced offensive attack, had his best season last year as a super senior, school record 69.6% completion percentage, leaves Westwood as the school's all-time leader in total offense, completions, TD passes, total TDs, got a live accurate arm, the ball spins clean off his hands. He's a true dual threat quarterback with skills that allow him to make plays off schedule. And he did have to handle a little bit in Kelly's offense. Checks at the line, multiple play options based on pre-snap reads, etc. Things that do translate to the NFL. He is still prone to youthful mistakes, especially when things, get hectic. He has to. He played panicked a little bit at times, and he's got to be better conscious, more conscious taking care of the football. But he does have an NFL quality arm. He has the toughness, the ability to create, that's kind of appeal to pro teams. And, I think his veteran presence is going to help him compete for a backup role early in his career. I mean, if you think about it, guys, the things that I look at in his film, he played in a scheme that is favorable for quarterbacks. But, he improved as a field reader over time, understood how to extend plays and create opportunities for himself outside of the pocket. He is at his best when he's throwing on time and utilizing possession throws. He has some lapses in vision and judgment against zone and when pressured. So he's got to cut down on ill-advised throws. Is all this starting to sound familiar? He gets through his progressions with good timing. He can layer throws between linebacker and safeties. He has enough arm strength to challenge, to be solid on the seam routes and against cover 2 buckets. He's very accurate in the quick game and on possession throws. If you think about it, every quarterback is unique, right? But a backup, and I've said this to Rabbi on more than one occasion, I made the comparison to, when people say, well, why is Tyler Huntley the Ravens backup? Because he has the same skill set as, to a certain extent, as Lamar Jackson. A backup
is a big blanket statement.
Yes, I know that, but I'm just saying, I'm leading to my point here. A backup who can play the offensive style and the scheme of the starters is important. That means you don't have to alter your playbook that much should you have to go to him. DTR could nicely mirror Jones with his dual threat skills. Look, and all of the things that he struggles with, lapses in vision, ill-advised throws, issues with ball security. Who does that sound like? Sounds like Daniel Jones at the beginning of his career. But this is a guy who's been through the wars in the Pac-12, played 5 years as a starter. And look, the Giants are well stocked at QB2, but Tyrod Taylor is at the beginning of the later stage of his career. So, round 6 at 209 or one of the 3 round, picks in round 7. Why not take a flyer on a player who could grow into being the next Tyrod Taylor as Jones's backup? Why not?
I just want to take a flyer on a player that I have a little more confidence in, and a guy who doesn't have as much raw athletic ability. He's a project. He came from Chip Kelly's system. And if there's somebody I don't want my quarterback to mirror from a college system, it's Chip Kelly, just because of a lot of the things doesn't translate well.
Rabbi, I know you're not a big Chip Kelly fan, and overall, I'm not a big fan of his either, but I'm just looking at it clinically in terms of what DTR was asked to do within the framework of that offense and whether or not the things he was asked to do will translate. That's the only thing that I look at.
I understand that, but it leads to my other point is, do you want a third quarterback in the room? Do you want to take somebody who you can easily get on a pickup on the free agent market? Because I know there will be quarterbacks with
why not?
There will be quarterbacks that are available in that spot, and there are places that you can get 6th round gems and other.
Aaron, here's the other thing, though.
Start for you on day one. You don't necessarily need to take projects if you don't have to.
Rabbi, here's the thing. At some point, they do need to. The Giants have always carried 3 quarterbacks for the last few years. It's been Davis Webb. There have been others. And like I said, whether it's at 209 in this number 209 in round 6 or any one of the 3 7th round picks, why there's no reason if you can, why not?
Don't listen to me though. My Jets pick has already been taken off of the board at number 10. So who the hell cares? All I would have to say is I like wide receivers, and I think you can't have enough wide receivers, as Joe said, especially because they get injured. They get injured very easily. So I think you can find it, like, if you can get a good wide receiver in this draft, you should. But I think once you get past the top 5 wide receivers in this draft, it is a very steep slope. So I'm going to take that 5th guy, which is Quentin Johnston of TCU. He had a wonderful season. He works in an RPO-based offense. I don't know if that's something that would really, that works. I think that works very well with Daniel Jones, actually. He has a lot of down the field speed, and that is something that they're going to need because Darren Waller can be their big play wide receiver / tight end, but he also has had an injury history over the last few years. He is a big man with a small man first. He is 208 pounds, which is heavy for a wide receiver. When you see some of these people in draft, you got 176, 177. You got Jordan Addison, which we'll talk about later, who's barely 175. He's 173 listed on here.
73.
Quentin Johnston is a guy who can really, really work. And I think he makes impressive grabs away from his body. He does a lot of different things. And the only thing I can say is he's very inconsistent. And I've seen a lot of TCU wide receivers not make the leap into the NFL, but going to take a flyer that hopefully will not get injured half of the time and then score a touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. No, I'm not bitter in any way, shape, or form about that. I think this is the guy. I think this is the guy you take. And again, you can never have enough offense right now, I think, in today's NFL, especially in a wide open NFC where the Eagles literally predicate themselves on stocking up in a position to help out their quarterback who 2 years ago could barely throw the ball. And then last year was probably going throw for throw with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So, and what helps out is weapons. And that's what the Giants need, more weapons.
Yeah. And, Rabbi, I think if you're going to go wide receiver in this spot, you have to go with a bigger wide receiver. You have enough guys on this team that are, for lack of a better phrase,
big though, and that's a big
small
problem.
fries. Yeah. The thing here's my thing. And I actually, I like Johnston. I watched, I didn't watch as much Big 12 football as you did last year, but I mean, I obviously, watched down the stretch and watched in the playoffs and he has the body, the big body type of wide receiver that you're looking for. He's got great size. He's got great speed. He had a great year at TCU. He's got a variety of releases to defeat press coverage and get ground in a hurry. TCU's offense had him on a lot of crossing routes and deep balls over the top. A lot of chunk plays out of this guy. The big thing with him, drops. He doesn't seem to trust his hands when you watch him play. And there are way too many balls that bounced off his body and onto the turf. As Joe will tell you, that sounds a lot like a guy the Giants already have in Darius Slayton. So, we'll see. After the catch, the comp there is like Mike Williams, long stride, power to break tackles. The big thing is his hands. If he can get better, with that, I think he's going to be a legitimate NFL wide receiver wherever he goes. I mean, and because of the issue with his hands, he has a very low success rate on contested catches and, catch radius is a bit of an issue. There should be a lot more for a guy that size. So, it'll be interesting to see if he can improve upon that, and if he comes to the Giants, he's going to be in a good wide receiver room. So that may help. And we all know that, Jones loves to get his wide receivers together in the off season, for impromptu passing camps. So that might benefit him if he comes here. He's got all the measurables and he has all the talent in the world, but needs to be, you're a wide receiver. You got one job, catch the football.
I want to say this before we move on. When we used to do this show live and we were breaking down a lot more picks outside of the top four, one of the things that we were always scared about is trades on draft night. We would have been going up a wall. We had the trade at number 3 before. We had a trade at 6 where Paris Johnson Jr. of Ohio State went as the Cardinals, who, if you recall correctly, were at number 3 and then were at number 12 and gave the 12th and 34th picks, gave those back to the Lions, and they also traded later round picks as well. And then the Eagles decided to give up a 4th round pick to move up one spot, take Jalen Carter. So I would have been up a wall, and I probably would have already left for my apartment by now if that was the case. We have 2 picks before we get back to who the Jets actually selected at 15. So let's talk about the quarterbacks in this draft. They're always put up on the most imaginary of pedestals, and it comes with a halo and angel wings, according to a lot of people. Spoiler alert, they're still on that pedestal, and it's very, very imaginary. Let's take a look at some of the prospects that we're going to see go early or have gone early in the NFL draft. And Jay, we talked about Anthony Richardson at number 4. What does the Colts catch?
I'll tell you this, Anthony Richardson, we see a quarterback like this every single year, and based on what you see, it's almost like people make too much of the potential, and then like he gets drafted on that. A lot is being made of the fact, that his completion percentage is only 53.8% last year. But then does how much of that is him, and how much of that is the lack of wide receiver talent at the University of Florida? And how much of that was the offense not taking advantage of what he does well? The things that like kind of stood out to me as I was looking at his film is, obviously, he's going to be one of the most athletic players ever to play quarterback in the NFL. Guy automatically comes in, with being a threat to gash defenses on the run. So he played in an outside zone play action offense with plenty of drop back reps that are translatable to the NFL. He did execute checks at the line of scrimmage. He did make an effort to manipulate the pocket, routinely ran through his progressions. There's a clear structure to his game. It just needs a lot of refinement. His receivers had a propensity for, getting open, struggling to get open, struggling to track the ball, struggling to hold onto the ball. So he does have he has elite arm strength. He can throw with distance, he can throw with velocity, has a quick release. When his feet are right, he can make throws in at tight windows. When he missed, though, he missed badly and usually high, sometimes due to miscommunication with his receivers on option routes. And that might occasionally be part of his game, but he's got to cut down on that. And the best way to do that is footwork and timing. He's been working with some private coaches to try and specifically on his footwork and his timing. If your lower body's not, and Joe and I have talked about this, if your lower body is not in the right base, in the right position, if your feet are in the wrong way, your shoulder will open up too soon, or you'll have to throw across your body, and that leads to bad throws. And while in college, if you have a cannon for an arm, you can get away with that. You're not going to get away with that in the NFL. But it is correctable. It's just a question of, how much of it he corrects before he gets to training camp, and how much the Colts are going to have to correct it for him. Here's the thing though. With him, I think pre-snap, he makes good reads and he knows where to look and where to go. He's done a good job of sniffing out blitzes and adjusting his protections. I didn't see him go through, get into hot routes or sight adjustments offense on the film, but I think that has more to do with his offense. He struggled against coverage disguises, and his interceptions are, more a product of reading defenses incorrectly, and hopefully that improves with experience. Again, not a lot of starting experience at Florida. But here's the thing: some film that I looked at from his last college game is why teams are high on his potential. And Shane Steichen, his new head coach, a guy who is developed Jalen Hurts, so I can understand the pick here. Here's the thing: final game against Florida State, so it's a rivalry game. FSU's weak side safety tried to bait Richardson into throwing a vertical to the weak side. Before the snap, he dropped down like he was going to play low. After the snap, he faked like he was going to rotate to the middle before spinning back to the weak side. Richardson sussed out the safety's final drop and knew the seam would be open to the opposite side. His feet were in good position. He was calm, threw a perfect pass for a touchdown. Look, he has the tools to be an elite quarterback, on par, with some of the guys in the NFL. There's a lot more translatable skills on film than I thought before watching his tape. he just, he just he's going to need some coaching up, and he's going to need, reps, experience. You don't want to, list him as like, a bust right off the bat, because that's kind of not fair to him. But I mean, do I think that taking him at 4 was a bit of a reach? Yeah.
I just don't like the fact that the Colts basically question of probably integrating him into the system can be easily answered by their coder. We're the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think that you work on the just way of life, especially when you have kind of lost your touch in getting quarterbacks and finding quarterbacks in the position. All right.
We'll see.
We'll see. It's just a bad fit overall, and he's going to start K1, which is not a good sign. All right.
No.
Anthony, you know who's actually going to help out? Will Levis. He still has not been drafted.
Actually, that's my guy.
Yeah.
Anthony already did Richardson. So why don't we let Joe, do talk a little Hendon Hooker, and then I'll come back to Levis.
On that one. Thank you for helping out there. Joe, what do you think about Hendon Hooker on the next level? Joe?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about him before. I think that the thing that I like about him is he's played a little bit. Now he had an injury, which is always gonna come back to be a question about somebody. But he's been at the same school for a while. He's played well. He's a tough kid. Not sure he's in the best system to learn NFL quarterback, as Jay brought up a few times. I think that, but again, I like his maturity. I like the fact that he has been through an injury. He's made his way back. He led his team pretty well last year. They made a run. Again, you're not playing with the top guys. You're not playing with Alabama. So as Jay was saying about his quarterback, you don't always have the greatest talent around you. You don't know how many guys are dropping balls. You don't know how many offensive lines are missing blocks. You don't have all this stuff. So maybe they made the system simple for him at Tennessee because of the other talent they had around him, that's what they could do. And again, that was the head coach, and that's his system and what to do. I think the kid could probably be good enough to learn a good system, to learn about reading defenses, about having more than one read on a play. The only thing that you worry about him is he's been injured already. Again, he made his way back. Some guys come back stronger and they're better and they never get hurt again. Other guys are chronic a little bit, and he's a little bit older. So if you don't put him in a system where he's going to start pretty quickly, now you're looking at a 28-year-old walking into playing, and he hasn't played in a while and all that kind of stuff. But I do think he's a strong candidate to be an initial backup for a team that maybe has a quarterback that's going to retire or going to get retired in a couple of years. And I think he would be a good pick for somebody. And again, I don't think he's going first round. I think he's going second or maybe third.
Anthony, since I stepped on you and basically gave your whole entire analysis away, but you did talk about Richardson anyway, what do you think Hendon Hooker can work on the next level?
Well, right now, the thing with Hooker is, that Joe mentioned, is the injury, the ACL, and how quickly he recovers from that is going to be really one of the biggest things. I mean, he's a pocket-sized passer. He has dual threat athleticism. You wonder how much the injury is going to take away from that. He's a rhythm passer, so he's one of those guys that when he's in a game and you want to get him into a rhythm, one call a couple of easy short passes, let him get to the floor of the offense, let him get his arm warmed up, get the receivers involved, and let him go from there. It's patient and allowing his routes to develop, which is a good thing, especially on the NFL level. One of the things, touchdown and interception ratio of 58-5 in the last 2 seasons. Regardless of the pressure, he has the same delivery and angles, so that's always a plus. And of course, the weaknesses is the torn ACL he suffered. How does he bounce back from that? He's also an older rookie. He's 25 years old, so that's something that's going to be looked at as well. He's going to have to prove that he can make passes in tight windows, and that and before the injury, he kind of had some up and down issues with that. Left some touchdowns in the film, missed some key throws to wide receivers. He's going to be a project in the long run for year one, definitely year two. If he does get a crack at being a starter, I would think it'll be maybe year three, and that's mainly because I think the first year or so in the NFL, it's going to be more about him getting his mobility back, feeling more confident in that knee after he had the injury. Look, I had a bad knee injury as well, so it's the mental thing on top of that he's going to have to overcome. And by year two, I think he'll be more of a guy who can maybe come in and fill in, play, get some snaps, get some reps. Year three is going to be really the key year for where his NFL career is going to go, because right now, I move for the kid. I hope things work out well for him. It's too bad his final season was cut short under the circumstances, but I think right now he needs time to not just to learn the game on the highest level, but he needs to be able to get himself mentally right. As far as trusting that knee, trusting that it will hold up when he's in a pocket and pressure's coming around him. And I think a year or so, learning and sitting in the quarterback room and learning behind a good veteran quarterback is going to be really good for Hooker in the long run.
All right, Jay has gotten exactly what he wanted. The Pittsburgh Steelers traded up, so we get to talk about them first. But Anthony has already talked about the guy that they picked. So what do you have to add on their pick of Broderick Jones?
Look, I love the pick. The Steelers had two pressing needs, even with the moves they made in the offseason. Obviously, one of them is offensive tackle. The other was cornerback. How do you not like a guy, coming out of Georgia and that offense and what he did? He goes from protecting Stetson Bennett's blind side to potentially protecting Kenny Pickett's. I mean, you look at the stat that just showed up on the screen, zero sacks allowed on almost 450 pass blocking snaps last year. I don't know how, the guy, he basically falls into the Steelers' lap. Omar Khan, in his first draft as Steelers GM, Andy Weidel, who in his first draft is the assistant GM, and Weidel's the guy who came over from Philly, who basically put the Steelers draft board together. I mean, you got to believe, they feel like they hit a home run here. Look, the thing with this is, how he's going to fit, into this offense, and it's going to take him a minute. He's got good physical control. He's got good rips, got good punches, good blocks. He can block for zone, he can block for power, and those are things the Steelers use in their offense. Has a body control to adjust to moving targets in terms of, pass rushers and secondary, defenders at the secondary level. Good length. He's not tight in terms of his body. His feet are quick. And the thing is there's a lot of people who believe that, his best football is ahead of him, and he got better every week in that Georgia offense. And I think, he'll continue to do that for the Steelers. I absolutely love the pick. Broderick Jones, was the number 2 ranked offensive tackle on the Athletics big board. So to have him, they must have, felt he was gonna, that it was more of a need that he wouldn't be on the board when they picked originally at 17, where they originally were. Second, when you move up to take a guy, you better be absolutely sure of this guy. So I got no problem with the pick or the strategy they use to get him. Yeah, it's a great pick.
And most importantly, the reason why you take him, there's probably 5 offensive tackle first-round talents in the draft, and the Jets were next. And so you pretty much jump over the Jets and all it costs too is a fourth round pick. The Steelers and the Patriots making deals together. I think
Yeah, how about
Patriots
that?
fans would probably throw up in their mouths that they had realized that they were helping out the
A little
Steelers.
bit.
And then-
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, quickly,
Hell has frozen over when the Steelers and the Patriots are
Yeah.
actually trade partners.
Yep.
quickly before we get to the pick at 15, I want to hear Jay's thoughts on Hendon Hooker real quick.
Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, Anthony and Joe have both talked about, his age, covering from the ACL. The thing that kind of stands out that I want to talk about, and what makes his evaluation tricky for me is that offense that he played in. It's called the deep choice option. It's kind of their bread and butter concept. It's a style of offense that typically features a two-back running game and run pass options and huge wide receiver splits to isolate those receivers. Typically, one receiver runs deep and has several options to adjust his route based on what the defense does. Every other receiver's job is to kind of just occupy a defender to create space for that deep choice route. And when it's run correctly, it's very productive and it's fun to watch. We all know that while Hooker was healthy, Tennessee was lighting up scoreboards, but it's not ideal for developing quarterbacks for the NFL. Because after Hooker checked the safety rotation, he basically would lock onto the receiver running the deep choice route, couldn't throw with much anticipation because he had to wait for the receiver to make a decision on, or whether it's make a choice. And that meant he didn't really have many pure progression plays. And sometimes he basically stood like a statue in the pocket waiting for that route to develop. Tennessee routinely lined up in a stack formation, and the receivers on the opposite side of the field are all well outside of the numbers. You might see those splits once or twice per game from, some of the more creative NFL offenses, but not every play. And one of the clips I saw, Tennessee ran a slot choice from a stack formation, and a receiver who ended up inside was assigned the choice route. He could have attacked vertically inside, faded outside, or cut across the safety's face. Safety closest to the stack rotated away, leaving space down the seam. Hooker connected with Jalen Hyatt, correct read, hit him in stride for a touchdown. There are a couple of other clips that kind of stood out for me, dagger concept, against, on three receiver side, receiver chose to the sideline, ran a dig route. Score was tied, 9 seconds left. Vols needed to get in field goal range. They ran this play to the other side, flipped the sidelines, gained a big chunk of yards. Hooker knew where the play was going as soon as the ball was called, yet when the receiver made his break, he hesitated, threw the ball late. Still had enough arm strength to fit the ball in before the safety could make the play on it, but it was almost picked off, and he's not going to be able to do that in the NFL. Like I said, a big drawback of this offense, not a lot of pure progressions. He stared down the guy making the choice route, and if it wasn't open, he kind of hoped the check down would open up, or he looked to scramble. And this is this scheme was originally developed at Baylor by Art Briles, and it wasn't uncommon for the receivers who weren't running the choice route to kind of just stand at the line of scrimmage and rest. And there was more than one clip where I actually saw that. So this is the thing with me. Another way that this offense can be detrimental, to a quarterback's development is there aren't a lot of built-in answers against the blitz. A lot of time, the offense is a 7-man protection, just relying on that deep choice route to get open. In the NFL, quarterbacks have to have a variety of answers against that blitz. Hooker doesn't even seem to have the basics in that regard. So he's going to have to learn that at the NFL level. Look, Tennessee's offense is a big reason for me why he's not a first-round pick. A lot of what I said, what he did, just doesn't translate to what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. And when you add that, to him being a very old draft pick, coming off a major injury and having a notable developmental curve, NFL personnel folk have cause to pause. Though he has reportedly impressed teams in interviews and he has a lot of traits you can't teach, I will be very surprised if a team is willing to take a first-round bet on an older developmental prospect who's, recovering from injury. So we'll see. Look, I like the guy and I think he has all the talent in the world. I just think that, he's got the trifecta of things that have put him behind the 8 ball. He's older. He's 25, so he's older. He's coming off an ACL injury, and he played in an offense where most of what he did doesn't translate to the NFL. So it'll be interesting if he lands in the right situation. And I'm going to harp on this is, if he lands in the right situation, then maybe, behind a guy who, as Joe said, is, maybe retiring in a couple of years, so he can kind of learn as he recovers from the ACL. Maybe he will acquire the skills that he needs that he didn't get playing in that offense. And maybe he will become, kind of a serviceable, QB2 spot QB1 and make a career out of it, but right now there's a lot of unknowns with Hendon Hooker.
All right. The Jets did make their pick. I mean, I saw the green room, so it is Nolan Smith. It is Nolan Smith. I'm going to ignore that. It is Nolan Smith, linebacker
Is it?
of Georgia.
Wow.
I'll take a look and get confirmation. But Anthony, interesting pick, Georgia. That's the third Georgia guy to go off the board in 7 picks. That's a premium in the NFL. Getting guys with national championship experience, and why not go for one from the back-to-back national champs? Another very good pick, and it is a low-risk pick, unlike Jalen Carter, who was picked a little bit earlier in the draft at number 9. High-risk pick, but going to the champion team of the Eagles. We'll talk about that a little bit. But do you think Nolan Smith is the right pick? God, I hope it is Nolan Smith. I'm pretty sure it is Nolan Smith, but if it's not Nolan Smith, I will interrupt you immediately and tell you it's not Nolan Smith.
So wait, give it a couple of seconds and see what.
Go ahead. I'll confirm it for you in a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, like I said with the Jets, I think you go with trying to rebuild that offensive line. We do have a need at linebacker to say the least, but like I said, I don't really know who the Jets are going to pick at the moment. But when we find out,
No, there was a pick in the
we'll see.
They showed him in the green room. It's Nolan Smith. They showed a picture. It's Nolan Smith, I think.
Well, I think it's just for the Jets is more of just adding to a strength that you already have, and obviously, if there is anything of an underbelly in that Jet defense was maybe the linebacker position. So I think it. Like I said, I'm not crazy about the pick because I do think the Jets.
Well, they can't take offensive line. Unless you trade down.
Yeah,
what they can't really immediately trade down. That was the last real. That was the last real guy. So
yeah, I think
okay. Hold on a second. I'm gonna have to stop you there because I think Nolan Smith is a very good pick, but I have a feeling that we're about to get a different pick, and this is going to be a little more controversial from what I just done here. So it's not Nolan Smith. I don't think it's Nolan Smith. At least it looks like it is. Hold on. This is not the fun part of the showcase, but we have to do it anyway. As we continue,
this kid is trying to drum up enough energy. He's thinking they're still in New York and there's plenty of Jet fans.
Well, he has to at
get
least
that type of reaction here.
What is he going to do? Basically, be a realistic guy, and basically, it looks. Come
on, kid.
Let me talk about it first. It is Will.
Oh, that's a curveball.
It's a little bit of a curveball, a little bit of a reach, Anthony. So
yeah,
again, position, not from the national champion. Sam, why did they show a picture of Nolan Smith in there? I hate having the sound up.
Sorry, I'm watching the stream, so there's a little bit of a delay. That's all.
Will McDonald, anything about him?
You know what? Jay, I'll let you lead this one off. I'm a little.
Yeah.
I'm a little flustered on this one. Okay, Will McDonald. Okay, I'll let you lead this one off. No, like I said, well, they went linebacker. It's just more.
Yeah, I mean, this is a surprise.
It's not an answer strength, but it might be. I guess it's a surprise. I think
it's definitely a reach because he has a second round grade on him. He's in terms of at his own position, the Athletic has him as the 8th ranked edge rusher. I mean, so many other guys. I mean, Nolan Smith was the 4th.
A much better pick.
Okay, I mean, so it's like you would think that if they were going to go edge, that Smith would be the pick. And honestly, as much as this is the first time in my since he's come along that like I'm looking, scratching my head and shaking it at Joe Douglas and wondering what the heck is he thinking here.
I mean, it's not the greatest of picks. It's not the greatest of picks that you would think, but I do think you do have a guy who's a 2-year starter. He is not seasoned, and he is still a guy who probably should have been a second-day pick. There are other people that probably would have picked before him. I would have picked Miles Murphy before him. I definitely would have picked Nolan Smith for him. I'm assuming they wanted to go offensive line, which is one of the reasons either that or Lucas Van Ness. And Van Ness went at 13 and Jones went at 14. So both of those guys were just off of the board, and it didn't look like the Jets had a backup plan. Joe,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Jets.
You're right. It doesn't look, they were on the clock for a long time, and it didn't look like they knew what they were going to do after they lost the.
Yeah, I
after the
think
jockey
those were their
in
first
front of
two
them.
targets, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I mean,
but he can jump over a car, fellas, in a parking lot. So
yeah,
that's a typical Jet pick. Let's
But I
go
mean-
for a guy who's on YouTube and can jump over a car.
this is what I don't get. You know, you can say that, yeah, Lucas Van Ness was off the board, you know, and that's fine, but you have a known quantity in Nolan Smith, who, you know, solid pass rusher, playing on one of the best defenses in the nation the last 2 years. You know, a big part of why they were, you know, champions, and you go you pass him over for Will McDonald. I really don't get that.
Yeah, this is,
I got, you know what?
This is the first one off. This is the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna make this unanimous. I'm a bit surprised. You have Murphy and Smith available. It's gonna go edge rushers who are probably better. In the case of Smith, you just watched them win another national championship and be a big part of that defense. I really do believe the Jets got caught with your rock in a hard place. I think they wanted to go O-line, but with the top two linemen off the board by the time they pick, and you watch the Steelers trade up in front of you to get the next best available lineman, I think the Jets didn't have a backup plan. I'm with Joe on this one. I
mean, I get that. I get that. But I mean, if you're going to pivot to edge rusher, I mean, look,
why not pick the best one?
Pick if you're going to go with an edge rusher. You know, I have a hard time believing, and obviously we're going to have to, you know, we know that Joe Douglas is going to get asked about this, especially, you know, because of the guys who are still on the board, who were rated higher than this guy who, you know, has led, to be fair, I mean, he was the Big 12's, you know, led the Big 12 in sacks, basically, you know, his 2 previous years, you know, was in double figures, only 7.5 last year. But I mean, you had the likes of Nolan Smith from Georgia. You had Miles Murphy, as Anthony noted, from Clemson, who was still there. Hell, you still BJ Ojulari from LSU was still on the board. I mean, Rabbi, you saw him play at LSU. I mean, I'm kind of
still a second round guy, but I think all of these players would have been better. I just think it's surprising. You could have even gone Osiris Torres to Florida if you wanted to keep in the offensive guard position.
Yeah.
He was gone at number 11. So, guys, let's move on and let's back to Anthony, want to finish off there?
Yeah, I only think with McDonald, if you're gonna have him even play a little outside linebacker as a hybrid 3-4 scheme, maybe it's a bit of a stretch that can work out, but I don't know. I would have to.
But
I think it was numbers. I think it's what you said, Rabbi, was, you know, there were 5 trades made right in there before them, and I think they got a little, you know, this happened to our guy a couple of years ago when all of a sudden the Cowboys and the Eagles made a trade and they moved up and they took the guy that they were waiting for to drop to them, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're kind of stuck with, well, what do we do now? They seemed a little bit unprepared as to if they didn't seem to have the, if this happens, what are we going to do? At any time, where some guys are better at that.
Like to me, especially ironically enough, I was joking about bringing the Steelers pick onto the show, but it had a direct effect on the Jets pick, especially with Project Jones. I believe that's also the Giants' backup plan was to trade down, and I think that's how the Bears ended up getting Justin Fields, which is another reason why everything is intertwined. All right, back to the quarterbacks. We're going to get into some draft positioning here before we get into the Giants pick to kind of close it out and then the top 15. But Jay, Will Levis is still on the board, and I think he's going to have a very good shot of being a successful NFL quarterback now that he's going to go to a team possibly with a plan, unless someone trades up for him.
Yeah, you know, I mean, he's always, to me, he's been the kind of the wild card in terms of, you know, you kind of didn't know where he was going to wind up. I mean, he has a first round grade. So, but, was he top 5 worthy? Was he top 10 worthy? Is he more top 15? He's kind of made a name for himself on social media with some strange stuff. But, for the purposes of this show, I try and put that aside and focus solely on what he does in between, the hash marks. The guy's got arm talent that's kind of, on the same level as some of the really talented quarterbacks in this league. Can throw with distance, can put a ton of velocity on the ball. Something that you notice on the intermediate throws, which are a staple in the NFL. Has a quick release, throws accurately at all 3 levels. Accuracy can break down against pressure. But a lot of what I saw on tape, a lot of that had to do, there was a huge difference between the talent that he had around him in 2021 in terms of offensive line and protection, running game, and, at the receiver position compared to 2022. And you could definitely tell this past year he was forcing things to try and make more plays. But I mean, here's the thing that stands out for me and why he's an intriguing pick. This guy has had pro-level coaching. Liam Cohen was his offensive coordinator who came over from the Rams. And his junior year. And last year it was Rich Scangarello who came over from the 49ers. So, this is a guy who, whose past 2 experience, whose offensive coordinators had him running concepts from the Shanahan-McVay tree, which obviously is the most prevalent in the NFL right now. Here's the thing that, think about this. So many college offenses rely on tempo and short play calls from sideline, those big, poster boards. Levis is a guy, he's in a huddle and he's calling plays that are 15 to 20 words. And he went to the line with 3 checks on every play. As Cohen said, those are things we asked him to do, that we asked Matthew Stafford to do, that every NFL coordinator asked their quarterbacks to do. So, granted, he's got 23 interceptions over the past 2 years. But again, a lot of that is him, trying to make more plays than he needed to because he was a little short on talent around him last year. Cohen was kind of asked how he'd put Levis in position to succeed if he had him as a rookie. And here's what he said. Here's the quote. If you can have a really good run game, limit the amount of straight dropbacks other than, the natural third down, got to have it, in red zone situations. There are going to be some straight dropbacks that, you're going to have to complete in an NFL game. But if you can limit the amount of straight dropbacks that he has, that's for any young quarterback. You don't want him standing in the pocket, just seeing a million different things and having a bunch of guys breathing down your neck. That's not an ideal place for a young quarterback, especially, one who doesn't have a ton of true quarterback pocket experience. But if you get him in an offense where you run the football, get him on the perimeter with bootlegs and nakeds and movements, then max protect pass plays, he can make every throw. I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm saying that's what I would do. Try to limit the number of dropbacks, try to do some quick game, RPOs, get him on the run a little bit with lead blockers like they do with Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, because he likes to get hit. He likes to run and play the game. He was just limited last year with an injury. The guy's superpower is play action, pushing the ball downfield, making every throw on the field. That's his superpower. That's what he's great at. And I will say this, Cohen's kind of spot on a little bit. I looked at some film. He tends to make, really great, rhythm first read throws, but he does tend to struggle a little bit, going through more than 2 reads on a play. And again, this could have been a lot of, bad protection from last year, and doesn't mean he can't do it, but there aren't a lot of examples of him doing it on film. He seems to prefer high-low reads. He reads them out quickly and throws them with anticipation. When he knows where he's going with the ball pre-snap, he's fine, but he has trouble processing when the defense changes the picture post-snap. There's some plays I saw while watching film on him that show that issue. First one, he wanted to throw a speed out against off coverage. Ball was snapped, free safeties in the middle of the field, bailed to play deep half. This is a rhythm first read throw, so Levis didn't see the free safety, but if he had, he would have known the cornerback was going to play the out route more aggressively. Cornerback didn't drop, was flat-footed, jumped the pass. Levis didn't see the rotation of the cornerback's body language, pick 6. Second clip I saw, showed defense getting out of its disguise before the ball was snapped and dropping into a Tampa 2. Lewis wanted to go curl flat, but not a good combination against Tampa 2. Too many underneath defenders. He tried to stick with the curl, hoping the wide receiver could find space to open up, but his eyes attracted more defenders. If he had moved off that read to the seam in the middle of the field, he might have had a touchdown, but instead he threw to a covered curl route. He had a clean pocket, had plenty of time to move on to another read. Now, he's willing to stand in tight pockets and take hits while making throws, but he doesn't manipulate with his eyes or his feet or his arm and navigate within the pocket. And he's much more likely to take off running if he sees space. He can get rattled early in games when facing pressure and run himself into trouble. The ability to feel the rush and move to buy time within the pocket is innate. It's hard to see him developing that, developing into a high-level pocket manipulator at the NFL level. We'll see. He's going to be 24 by, week 1, not ultra productive in his 2 seasons as a starter at Kentucky. Again, never surrounded with a lot of talent while competing in the SEC. But, that's what makes evaluating him tougher. There are times he was fooled by post-snap, rotations by the defense and had a tendency to throw the ball into harm's way. But it's also worth wondering whether all the pressure he saw in college has ingrained bad habits that are going to be tough to correct. Even in clean pockets, he could be skittish and look to take off too soon. Arm talent, abilities as a runner signal that he has a high ceiling, and he does have natural accuracy and experience with NFL-level schemes and concepts, and that might be important to some teams. So, it's a question. He's a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde. So it's a question of which guy you're going to get. I like the fact that he has experience in these type of concepts, playing 2 years, in, Shanahan, McVay, offenses. And maybe the lack of protection, the lack of talent around him, saw a bit of a step back. But I mean, as most people who review quarterback film and kind of what you want to see, you like to see someone, improve year over year over year. You don't want this, roller coaster thing. Makes it hard to evaluate him. So again, Rabbi, like you said, the farther he falls down in the draft, the more likely he is to go to a situation where he won't be under pressure to get thrown into the fire day one. And I think that's a situation like that will help him clean up some of the rough edges and maybe help him, get to where he was as a junior, where, he was lighting up secondaries and throwing touchdown passes. That guy would have been a top 5 pick. So, I think the disparity between his production in his junior year compared to his senior year after, the switch in offensive coordinator and the change in talent around him does make him a bit of a, he's a bit of a conundrum. But it'll be interesting to see where he ends up and if he ends up in a place where schematically he's a good fit. And I think he needs that, as much as, and maybe in some ways more so than say Richardson or Hooker does.
All right, let's move on as we all mourn the Rangers season pretty much coming to an end tonight in terms of here, but that's another story for another time. Let's not talk about that. No wide receivers have been picked yet in this NFL draft, which makes this next segment perfect to put right over here. Someone will probably get picked while we're talking. So Garrett Wilson, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase were 3 of the wide receivers picked in this decade, and now are some of the top pass catchers in the game. 3 more in 2023 are looking to make waves. So with that being said, Jordan Addison of USC has a chance to be the first wide receiver off of the board of this draft. What is his stock going to be on Sunday?
Well, I'll tell you that. I need to catch my breath here since I've done a lot of talking about quarterbacks of late. So why don't we let Anthony talk a little,
Thank you for producing that on the fly. Anthony, Jackson Smith and Jigba did not have too much action in the 22-23 season for Ohio State, but he also has a 347-yard receiving game in the Rose Bowl from 2022. So I'd say he out. What are we expecting from JSN in the NFL?
Yeah, 3 games is all you have as far as a body of work for 2022 for JSN. But you look at that, obviously the Rose Bowl performance of 15 catches for 347, averaging 192 receiving yards per game. The last 5 games of the 2021 season, plays tough in the teeth of the defensive zone breaker, elevates his catch focus when contested. Also soft hands, which you can never have a wide receiver, enough wide receivers that has soft hands who does let the ball hit the body, catches everything with his hands, tracks down deep is a deep threat when healthy, smooth athleticism, With Jackson, with Najimba, obviously, because you do wonder a guy with his speed. When you see guys that can run fast, you think of hamstrings, and obviously that's something that hindered him for a while. And we saw with as far as the Giants and Kadarius Toney, having his issues with the hamstrings, and I don't know what it is with speed guys and the leg issues, but Najimba, if he can get healthy, he's gonna be. He's a guy who can be a deep threat, but also fit into the slot too. And obviously, in Ohio State, when you look at all the wide receivers that they had, and you think about where Ohio State would have been had the gym have been healthy 100% throughout the regular season. I think he's a guy who can come in and start right away. I think he has the skill set to be a number number 2 or number 3 guy on the depth chart. Definitely someone who can work the middle of the field, has the speed to stretch the defenses out. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes because do we have a wide receiver that's been drafted? No, not
We
yet.
have it. That's what I said at the beginning of the segment. So next time, let me know if you listen to that one. But
Yes. I was so busy being caught up in the morning of the Rangers that you brought that up. I was trying so hard to ignore that.
I understand, but no, we have not had a wide receiver pick just yet, Anthony. And
but I see the Jimmer as definitely as a slot guy who has the ability to stretch out the defense. You think of a Victor Cruz kind of guy who had that big time, that big game ability, but can also keep a drive going on third down, third and short, third and long. And those are dime a dozen now. I look at that and like if you could and never mind his personal politics, but a guy like Cole Beasley, why he was so important and had a good career in the NFL was his ability to catch those third down passes and extend drives. The Jimmer has the athleticism to make a big play after the catch, but his key day is going to be keeping drives alive, keeping that defense on the field, tying and wearing about, and being able to win those one-on-one mismatches on the inside. So I could really see him coming in and being a starter as a number 2, or definitely being a slot guy. Depending on what offensive system he goes into. Like, heaven forbid he goes to Kansas City, like he needs enough weapons.
Kansas City doesn't necessarily know how to use
but he would fit it perfectly in a split formation offense.
Look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's kind of been a bust with that team. Joe, I'm going to go to you second, and then I'll go back to Jay. But Zay Flowers is typically, in most people's mind, one of the top wide receivers on this board. Some have him second, some have him third, some have him fourth. I don't ever believe in any boards, but Zay Flowers had a damn good career at Boston College, and he had some good measurables to make it into the NFL.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the guys that I think he should be going here pretty soon, actually.
I would not be surprised if any of them got picked in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think we started talking about this at the exact right time because I'm pretty sure they got to start running on these a little bit. Just to go back to those other 2 quarterbacks we were talking about with Levis and Hooker. You know, you got Minnesota, and you know the Rams are actually going to be invited to this draft on the second day, and they've been missing for a couple of years. But that's not a bad spot for one of those guys.
By choice, by the way, from West Seed, by choice.
Yeah. No, I mean, they did what they had to do, and they won, and now he's trying to rebuild it. And I don't think it's. I think they're missing so many more pieces that to go get the quarterback now might be a mistake. But one of those guys that we said could kind of be brought along in a couple of years might want to take over for Kirk Cousins. Wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. But yeah, I think Zay Flowers would be good. I think he's ready to move in. I think he's got playing at Boston College is a little bit different. It's not exactly the highest level of competition, but they play pretty well there, and they play very well in their division. And I didn't get a chance to see a lot of him this year, but I think again, I think you're going to see these guys go all at once here once it starts.
Yep.
And
usually how it happens.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in New York.
I am surprised that we've had 2 running backs go in the top 12. which
Yeah,
is
I
almost
know.
a rarity. And I think we're going to talk about that in our last segment. If anybody does, if anybody doesn't, I will. Okay, Jay. Finally, if your voice is back, let's talk about Jordan Addison of USC. You've seen him all the time. His stock is very high. I think he's the best wide receiver in this draft just because of JSN's injuries last year and only playing 2 games. Addison had a full year. He's probably got the most talent to make it on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, he's graded as a late first round, early second in terms of that. He's the number 2 ranked receiver on the Athletics board. He's an outstanding route runner. He's got great footwork in his transitions in his routes. He's a tough cutter. He's a tough cover on outs and digs. 2 routes he's going to run a lot of in the NFL. He has the ability to create spacing by finding the corner's blind spot. He's got some immediate acceleration, forcing defensive backs to retreat early and commit their hips. Vertical skills to get over the top of coverage. Great short area quickness, make him a slippery target for tacklers. He's improved his ball skills and his focus each season. Played more snaps outside in 2022, but has been primarily a slot receiver over his career. About 60% of his receiving snaps have come inside. But he's played both in Lincoln Riley's version of the air raid offense. Went from being a Biletnikoff winner at Pitt, putting up some ridiculous numbers, catching passes from Kenny Pickett, to being the number 1 target for Caleb Williams when he was healthy. And he did miss 3 games because of a nagging left ankle. The thing I like about him is he marries his play speed, his controlled suddenness, and his detailed focus as a route runner to create some spacing and some run after catch opportunities. He's lowered his drop rate every year. 14.3% as a freshman, under 10% as a sophomore, only 3.3 last year as a junior. He has the roots and can run vertical speed and work all 3 levels of a route tree. He's projects best in the NFL slot, but I mean, he should be a starter. He could be a starter from day one. We'll see. The thing to keep an eye on with him, is the size. He's only at 5'11", only 173 pounds, but considering the NFL has played less, press coverage than in days past, I don't know if that's going to be as much of an issue. My thing with him is, he's really good getting in and out of his breaks. He does bring some punt return skills, so that might help him get on, make a place for himself on a roster sooner rather than later. To me, from what I've seen, he's shown that he can run all the routes in a tree, no matter what that tree is, and play all the wide receiver positions, both outside positions and the slot, in 2 different offensive schemes, and catching passes from 2 quarterbacks with very different styles in Pickett and Williams. I agree with you, Reb. I think he's the most NFL-ready wide receiver on the board, and bare minimum should be a contributor in a rotation from day one. Whether he's a day 1 starter, that all depends on, where he lands.
I compare him a little bit to Drake London of last year, although London was a little
London's
more
bigger.
Well, yeah, but London had a little bit of an up and down year, and I don't think he's on the right team because he doesn't really have anyone to get him the ball. And that's a big plus. If you don't have the guy to get you the ball, it's not going to be a good wide receiver unless you're a generational talent.
But I will say this, whether it's the previous offensive system or Lincoln Riley's system, USC has always done a good job of producing NFL caliber wide receivers.
And they're going to continue doing that.
I think they will as well. The guys who are still there behind him, now all are going to get some more time. And, you're talking about Taj Washington, and Jerry Rice's kid, who is on that, is in that receiver room. So it'll be interesting to see, how those guys develop in year 2 under Lincoln Riley. But I mean, even before he got to USC, if he had come out directly after, winning the Biletnikoff at Pitt, his resume as an NFL ready receiver was already kind of stamped. The extra year at USC just gave personnel folks a chance to look at him, do what he does, but in a completely different style of offense. And he showed he can do it. So I think no matter where he lands, I think he's scheme neutral. I don't think there's an offense he doesn't fit in unless it's a, offense where they don't throw the football, which,
Does that mean Jerry Rice's kid and Marvin Harrison's kid are about to be drafted into the NFL?
I think Marvin Harrison's kid is a lot, the apple is a lot closer to the tree on that one than it is with Jerry Rice's kid.
Okay, I'm just going to say this. How old are we that we see the fathers and now the kids possibly playing in the National Football League?
Especially
how long have we been around?
I'm like, why is Marvin Harrison exist? All right. Next up is the quarterback position. Apparently a position that general managers had to value a little bit more in this draft because two of these people that we've picked to spotlight are already on teams. It's a position that helps the receivers from before from doing anything in the games this fall. 3 prospects that we picked will go in order of draft pick. So, Joe, we just happened to give you the number 5 draft pick. Seattle picked Devin Witherspoon earlier tonight. He can make some noise in that position. And from what I've heard the Seahawks do a good job developing quarterback positions.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, not too shabby. They have some history at doing that pretty well. I think that's going to turn out pretty good for them. I'm just going to do something here that I want to make sure I get it right for you guys.
Yeah, they have such a good history, and I think having a fact that they have 2 draft picks in the top 20 and had the number 5 pick. This is the pick. That pick that we talked about was from Denver. Is a steal, considering the fact that if you think Geno Smith is the guy to lead your team over the next 2 to 3 years, that you just have yourselves a stud in that position. I think my biggest problem is he could probably draw more flags in that spot. He has a tough fine line in that. Illinois is a great position, is a great place for him working under, I think, Brett Bielema as their head coach. Just fiery personality, and I think if there's anybody who represents Seattle, who could represent a new Legion of Boom, I mean, Witherspoon was, it was really between Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez, who we'll talk about in just a second, Anthony, with your pick for the number 1 cornerback in this class. Witherspoon got it at number 5, maybe a little bit higher than you would think you would pick, but I think for Seattle, it's the right spot.
And I think, the fact that he was a 4-year starter, he was the only true freshman ever started at Illinois. So I think that, again, I like me, I like guys who stay in school, the guys that learn the craft, the guys that thrive in their position at that point, and be very, very, very consistent. 33 tackles, 52 tackles, 41 tackles, passes defense 2, 9, and 17, 2 interceptions, 3 interceptions. So very, very, very consistent in what he does. Knows how to play the game. Again, he was in school for 4 years, which I love. So I think, and he was the number 2 guy on the board as far as cornerbacks go. So I think it was the right pick to get that high. And they're about to make their 2nd pick of the night.
And I think that's going to end up being an offensive player, in my opinion. But we'll talk about that in just a second. Anthony, number 17, Christian Gonzalez is now a Patriot. And we here in New York know how Oregon players do in the NFL because Kayvon Thibodeau really made an impact on defense last year. What do you think about Gonzalez, who many people's standards was definitely one of the top cornerbacks of the
Well, he's definitely going to be a guy who could be an immediate impact, especially for Bill Belichick. When you think about some of the holes that they have to fill in that defensive backfield in New England, he was all Pac-12 pick, all Pac-12 pick. Led the team with 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, 50 tackles. He also blocked the kick in 12 starts. Did not play in the bowl game. Actually, chose to forego it to go into the draft. This is his list. Desire Brenner's size, speed, and explosiveness. Fluid and loose movements is fine. Length and strength allows him to bully releases on the press, which is what the Patriots love to do. By the way, I hate to cut myself off, but JSN did go to Seattle at number 20.
Great pick.
Yep, I was
So,
about to just say
yeah,
that. Yeah,
so that is a
JSN is
definite.
the pick on that one.
So right now, we'll talk about obviously, who's winning, the best picks and all that later on. But getting back to Gonzalez, one of the things that he's gonna have to work on is his anticipation and jumping routes. Like sometimes he gambles a little too much, a little inconsistent, and out of position to as far as tackling is concerned. But also when he's is back against the ball, is away from the football, running downfield, and being able to relocate the football once on a deep pass. This is something he's definitely going to have to work on. But he is a guy who can step in and be an immediate impact player. Any other team, he could be a number one corner. Let's see how it works out in New England. Belichick loves his guy, his defensive hard-nosed guys. Gonzalez definitely has that kind of attitude. So it's a great pickup for New England.
Yeah, I think that's a very good pick, and I think he's probably one of the guys in this draft that has probably the most capability of being a Pro Bowler really quickly. I think again, the two quarterbacks are going to two very rich systems, and I think those are probably some of the best fits in this entire draft.
Yeah, it's a surprise that I think these guys have to kind of fall a little bit. I thought they would have been drafted a little higher, but I understand the teams in front of kind of going to more a need-based pick, depending on what happened. And we have seen a lot of trades tonight, so that's kind of thrown a lot of pre-draft boys
a lot of trades
off the scale, so to say the least.
Yeah, the question
is compensation pick trade earlier today between the Eagles and Cardinals, I learned, because of possible tampering for that hiring.
What's going to be interesting, Rabbi, is if Seattle taking JSN here signals that run on receivers that Joe was referencing when we were talking.
The Chargers are next. I have a feeling they would too, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let's stick to what we have right now. Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State has a couple of Pennsylvania roots. Just learned that apparently through my endless hours of research and looking at film and people jumping over cars on YouTube. Of course, his father is the great Steeler, Joey Porter. Where do you see JPJ on the next level? Although I don't think anyone calls him JPJ.
No, he's an interesting pick. I mean, there is a first round grade on him, so it'll be interesting to see, if he goes here in the first round, or if based on other changes he falls. He's the number 3 ranked cornerback on the board, and 3-year starter at Penn State, exclusively an outside cornerback in DC Manny Diaz's man heavy scheme. Not like he didn't give up. He didn't have an interception, but he didn't give up a touchdown in 2022. Only allowed 9 catches on 26 targets for 70 yards in man coverage. He'll put himself in front of receivers and smother them in the press to reroute them. He's good at disrupting receiver timing, up and down the field. However, he does play a little on his heels, and he can lose momentum in his hip flip. He can hang on receivers to slow their routes. He is a little handsy and a little grabby. He picked up 11 coverage penalties, 9 PI, and 2 defensive holding calls, in the past 2 seasons. And there are probably several others that should have been called. Look, and because of this, the people have, the red flag of the bust potential on him, because his play can be a little undisciplined, and he can be, his change of direction can be a little unbalanced. But, he's an intriguing matchup of potential, in the NFL because of his length and his body quickness. He's a bump and run type cornerback, and he's not going to be a slam dunk in every scheme. He's at his best in press coverage when he can use his arm length to reroute wideouts. In off coverage, he has a tendency to trust his eyes and close the distance with stride, with his long stride. He has a great feel for working around pass catchers to poke the ball away. Like I said, he didn't get any interceptions, but according to Pro Football Focus, he only gave up one play of 15 plus yards. He's a reliable tackler in space, doesn't play with the same level of ferocity, shall we say, as his dad. But he's plenty tough enough for the position he plays. The thing that's interesting for me, is whether or not, where he ends up, like I said, because he projects as a classic bump and run cornerback, played predominantly press coverage for Penn State, was rarely asked to backpedal or read and react from off coverage. If Pittsburgh was going to take a cornerback, he was the guy that I saw them taking, because Pittsburgh's scheme is where he would be a good fit. Talented physical cornerback who can play man coverage. And obviously the ties to the organization, would make him too good to pass up, for the Steelers. And my note here was that they, that it would be too good for them to pass if they don't take an offensive tackle with their first round pick at 17. What did they do? They moved up to 14, took a first round pick. And Rabbi, I think it's official. The run on wide receivers has begun. Your guy from TCU just became Justin Herbert's new best friend.
I love how basically I said no, not everybody announced picks on the show, and then immediately right before we get to the end of this, everybody starts announcing picks. Thanks.
Hey, if it was anybody, I only said something because it was your guy, Quentin Johnson.
I know, but still, but yes, we are starting the wide receiver round. All right, we have a couple more picks before we'll close the show, talking about who the Giants picked at number 25. We have 7 players in the top 15 that we haven't talked about yet. So, Anthony, as a little exercise, I want you to pick one of those 7 players that we haven't talked about tonight in the top 15, or I haven't talked about tonight in the top 15, and let me know who you think made a pick that intrigues you. It could be for the right reasons, it could be for the wrong reasons, but it has to be for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I think it's the Lions at number 12.
Yeah,
Jameer
that's an
Gibbs.
interesting pick.
That was very interesting. So I'm thinking of the Lions. I was like, well, if he was going to have a running back that was also that could score a touchdown, why didn't you just keep Jamal Williams? I mean, that's a little
not too much to keep, I think.
Yeah,
I know you love his anime style, and I know you love his love of anime, but I know.
Understandable as well. But I just look at it like this with the Strait. I think it might be a bit of a reach at number 12. Not to mention that the Lions defensively was atrocious against the pass. You probably needed a little more help on that end of the football, on that side of the football. You had obviously not one, but 2, 3 corners that's available that they would have been a more of a better fit for the Lions defense, especially when you're on the bottom tier as far as pass defense, and you decide to go with a running back of all things. It's a bit of a reach, and I would say that too. Look, I'm a big fan of Dan Campbell. I think he's doing a phenomenal job with the Detroit Lions, considering what it was 2 years ago. And what they finished last year, they went on that great winning streak at the end of the season, had a chance to backdoor their way into the postseason. Ultimately, that didn't work out. As they were eliminated literally before they took the field at level field, that final week of the season. But yeah, Gibbs at number 12, and of course, I think it was number 2, number 3 ranked running back. They had him
number 2. It was
as late first.
That we're about to mention, and then it was a little bit of
he was a late first round or maybe early second round pick. I think this is a surprise. I think even the guys on ESPN and NFL Network was kind of taken aback by Detroit going this route.
It's a little bit of a surprise. I think that's probably why they moved back, and the question really is, how do you pair him with DeAndre Swift? Because DeAndre Swift did help that team a lot last year. Jamal Williams was the touchdown guy, though. One of the best touchdown guys in the NFL. Loved the Lions loved Dan Campbell last year. Basically saying we don't want them to go. Basically saying we hate
my fellow Naruto fan. Okay, so shout out to Jamal Williams.
I think that was Kevin. You're worse than our wrestling references. Like, no one notices them, especially. Jay, a lot of ways I would like to go here. I'm kind of curious how you go. There are a lot of interesting picks.
Yeah. There's a lot of, picks. And Rabbi, you and I together have been doing, this draft show for years now. And there's always picks that kind of make you go, really? That's who you picked at that spot? And there, I mean, we, obviously the first head scratcher for us, was the Jets pick at 15 with McDonald. What's interesting, and Anthony talking about Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. I mean, it seems like a duplication of pick. I mean, and the Lions, they
a little duplication of pick.
A little duplication.
It goes with their scheme. And
yeah,
I think you can't have too many offensive. You can't have too many offensive weapons, especially in that system. That's what masks the fact that the Lions had Jared Goff, because there's a lot of.
I mean, I always like when a pick meets a need and it's not a reach to get him. And to me, the pick that I most identify with that so far is the Raiders taking, Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. He's a very interesting pick. Pass rusher, can get to the quarterback, rushing off the edge or even between the tackles. The guy's a flat out quarterback hunter. It's that simple. You might see him drop into coverage depending on, where they move him around. He can set the edge when teams run at him. He is 6'6", 271, so he has great size there. Gets off blocks. And here's the thing though. Outside of Max Crosby, the Raiders were lacking severely in pass rush options. So Wilson makes a lot of sense here. They needed somebody to pair with Max Crosby. 18% of his, he generated pressure on 18% of his pass rush attempts last season. That was the second highest mark in all of Division I. So yeah, Chandler Jones is on this team, but Chandler Jones is closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning. So, I mean, look, as someone who roots for a team that relies on bookend pass rushers and has struggled and has been lacking in depth and has seen the effect of not having that third guy to be part of the pass rush rotation, that also, I look at this pick and go, yeah, he gets to learn behind, two of the better pass rushers in the NFL. So he'll be rotational to start, but I mean, he definitely has a clear path to being, the other starter alongside Crosby as his career, kind of takes off steam. We pulled his, I pulled his scouting report. Rabbi, you and I kind of went through this, and other interesting guys that we thought we might have to talk about, and Wilson was one of them. The interesting thing that kind of stood out to me when I was looking at his, at the scouting reports on him, is the way he was kind of listed by NFL.com. And I'm going to read exactly as the overview was on him. Long-limbed defender who figures to turn into a full-blown nightmare for opponents if he continues to grow into both his frame and his game. His combination of traits and athleticism should yield flashes of dominant play in both phases, meaning pass and run, as he continues to get bigger and stronger. Length and lateral quickness are ingredients for chaos as a backside run game disruptor. He's capable of ranging and tackling from distance if he the run flows wide. On the flip side, he's not very instinctive as a run defender, and his play demeanor could stand to be a little thornier when attacking blocks. He has the physical tools to create pocket push as a power rusher early on, but the hand usage and rush plan will need tutoring for him to become well-rounded. a well-rounded two-way rusher. He gets to learn from two of the best, as I just said. He might not set the world on fire in year one, but the talent and value, and ceiling will be easy to see. Granted, he's coming out of a system at Texas Tech where they ran a 3-3-5 base scheme. So he, didn't play a lot with his hand down. But, Raiders don't play that way either. So I think, you got a situation where you got a player who not only fits a team in terms of need, and it's not a reach for him to be the number 7 pick in the draft, but, he's a scheme fit as well. So, I mean, that's kind of where I land on, a top 15 pick who I thought was, perfect marriage of need, player at that pick, and the scheme fit.
By the way, Joe, your prediction on wide receivers getting a run has really come true because Dave Flowers is
this is what happens.
Yep, it's just one after the other. It's almost like a fantasy football draft. 2 ways that I want to go with this top 15 pick. I have a feeling you're going to go one way, but if not, I'll pick both of them. So what top 15 pick are you looking at?
You talking to me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's been a long night, so I don't know if we're actually how much longer we have to where we list two down each other eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the best picks of the top 15 was Jay's team, was the Steelers moving up to take Broderick Jones. Again, I think it's a need pick. It's a talent pick. They knew they needed it. They knew that they want who the guy they wanted. So they obviously moved up to get that spot. And that was pretty smart to do. Again, you look through some of these picks other than, the guys I don't like in Richardson and the Jets pick, but I think that was smart of them to get up there, to get who they wanted and to start building around who, now that they have a quarterback that they're going to stick with for a while, who played fairly well. I think, again, they have running game. They have running back, they have quarterback. So let's start moving along that, getting that offensive line shored up. So I thought that was one of the best picks of the night.
All right. So I want to focus on 2 picks that are pretty big picks for me. And I think we're going to have a little discussion on this. We still have about 10 minutes before the Giants pick, and then we call it a night. I love the picks of Bijan Robinson and Jalen Carter. I don't love the teams that they went to. For Bijan, let's talk about him for a second, and I'll explain to me why. Bijan Robinson is the best wide receiver in this draft.
Running back.
Wide running back. Again, 3 hours. But,
got wide receivers on the brain. I get it.
I know. What? Not even close. It's not even close. He is a big play guy. 45 plays with 20-plus yards, 8 carries of 50-plus yards. He has basically a Derrick Henry type running back. Doesn't consistently punish, but he can run through you if you dare to get to him. He is probably the last person I've seen that was that good of a running back in college and had all the skills, was ready to go in year one, and he would have probably been picked number 1 if the Giants general manager was still around as Saquon. I think Saquon is probably the last person that reminds me of all of this talent, which is transferable to the next level. I think Bijan is a great running back. He's going to start from day one. One problem as I have with him as a Falcon is I don't like the position of where he is at. I don't like Atlanta as a team. I don't like the way Atlanta's going, and I don't understand what Atlanta is actually doing as a franchise. They've been linked to going from Lamar Jackson. They've been linked to going from many free agents, but they're like, we like Desmond Ridder. We want him to succeed. I just don't know. I feel like at the end of this, Bijan Robinson is going to be like running in the halfback option half of the time for Atlanta. The division, sure they can. It is the NFC South is. If Tom Brady doesn't come back, and he's not coming back to the Bucs, spoiler alert, even if he did come back, one of the worst divisions in football, and possibly we could have an 8-9 winner in that division again. It's terrible. Like the Saints had very few good skill players last year, and the only real upgrade they made is they finally have a quarterback in Derek Carr. That's all they did. The Panthers are kind of in a little bit of a free fall. The Bucks, I don't even think Baker Mayfield will end up being their quarterback to start the year, and I don't think any team should ever say the sentence. I think Baker Mayfield will be my quarterback to start the year in this 2023 season, and expect to win.
Oh,
So it's going to be a very, very rough road for the NFC South. But Atlanta is as clueless as the rest of the teams in that division, and I think Bijan Robinson is going to be depended on way, way too much, and it could. They say running backs' careers die in their 30s.
Well,
prime example of it right here, just because the mileage that he is going to have is almost Derrick Henry, like where he's going to be treated like a bell cow and a bell cow and a bell cow, and he'll be one of the best running backs in football, and then he's going to have to break down.
Rabbi, I'm going to take a little bit of issue with that. Is like, I mean, because Derrick Henry is a unique type of running back. Derrick Henry is a freight train. Okay. He's a container car freight train. Bijan Robinson is not that. Okay. Bijan Robinson, is the 5'11", 215 pounds. He's got the size that you're looking for, the standard size, let's say you're looking for in a running back. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's going to get utilized the same way, but I think, Arthur Smith recognizes.
I think he's going to get utilized the same way.
No, I don't.
You don't have to say no to me. You don't know what the answer to that question is.
I'm going to disagree with you on this.
But you can just don't say no to me and find out the point.
I'm going to disagree with you here because I think Arthur Smith recognizes that, he's adapted to his offenses before, because Derrick Henry had injury issues and they did not run his replacements the same way that they ran him. So he has shown that he can alter his scheme based on the type of running back he has back there. I look at Robinson and I see, the Saquon Barkley to Desmond Ritter's Daniel Jones. We all know that, a good running game and a solid running back is a nice thing for a young developing quarterback to have. Robinson is a 3-down back. He can play, he played in an RPO offense, which utilized both zone and gap principles. He can do it all out of the backfield. He's a good route runner when you put him out there. Good at the second level. So I think it's a good marriage. And I think, that look, they understand that they're rebuilding from scratch. And you get those two positions in place. And I think the way he'll get utilized is not going to be the way he utilized Derrick Henry, where, you ground and pound and pound and pound, because Robinson's not that type of back. So I think you'll see a little more, you won't see the exact same. But I think he'll adjust it, to the talent that he has. He has not, nothing that I've seen from Smith based, both in his time as offensive coordinator in Nashville and his head coach in Atlanta. Granted, he's had the cupboard's practically bare in Atlanta, but you've got London. You've got a running back. And if you think Desmond Ridder is your guy at quarterback, then what you're looking at is what you see as the beginning of your version of a triplets, and we'll see how that goes. But I don't think he's going to use Robinson the same exact way as Henry, because he's not the same type of back as Henry. That's all I'm saying.
By the way, we have another wide receiver that went off the board, Jordan Addison at number 20.
That's my guy. Man, Jordan Addison gets to play alongside of the.
Oh my God! Yeah, of Justin Jefferson. What a combination!
Yeah, Addison and Justin Jefferson. Wow.
And that's the third wide receiver because KJ Osborne is still probably there, and he got some very useful experience last year. That's a dangerous wide receiver combo.
Wow, that is.
You know what?
Kirk Cousins is just like salivating right now.
Yeah.
You know what?
Now he's got it.
I would say.
What was that, Joe?
Yeah,
I said now Kirk Cousins has to know what the first down marker is.
yeah. You know what? I was
You know,
about
a
to
lot
say
of
that. I was
guys
saying,
as quarterback,
yeah,
but
yeah. I was about to say that. Like they gotta encourage Kirk Cousins to actually throw the ball more than 5 yards on 4th and 8. But
Man,
well,
Justin
wow.
Jefferson
So by
and
the way,
Jordan Addison.
So by the way, the Jaguars have made this night easy for us because now the Giants are they picking they're picking 24th and 25th now.
Yep.
So the Giants actually
Wow.
Jaguars trade. So
Okay, how did that, Rabbi? Do you have the details of that trade? How did?
yeah, but it does have the Jaguars at 24. The Giants are definitely at 24. So guys, what do you, again, let's first of all, let me quickly mention the other guy I was mentioning. I think Jalen Carter is a bad fit for the Eagles, for Giants fans, because this is as good of a pick, I think, as the Eagles can do. You only give up a 4th rounder to go get an All-American, 32 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, missed 3 games early in the season, played less than 20 snaps in 4 other games. There's only been one person at defensive tackle who's been graded higher by Pro Football Focus, and that is Quinn Williams of Alabama, and in 2014. Obviously, the fatal crash of a teammate and a recruiting staffer having to basically plead guilty to no contest of, they did trade picks, by the way. So 24 is the last pick that we'll talk about tonight. But Carter had to plead no contest to charges of reckless driving and racing, but and he's had dedication in every question to begin with, but you put him in an organization which has one of the most stable defenses in the NFL. This is the Saints pick that the Eagles got via a trade from a couple of years ago, I think. So that's why they were picking at number 10, what ended up being number 9. And I think the Eagles, for where they drafted, because Carter could have probably gone anywhere from the 6 to 10 range. He's too good of a talent to. If Carter doesn't get arrested, we're talking about him in the top 4.
Oh, without a doubt,
guys. I think this Carter pick, this Jalen Carter pick, the Bijan Robinson and Jalen Carter picks are very intriguing to me at 8 and 9 for multiple reasons. But as a Giant fan, having to see another guy on the other side of the field, another Georgia player being drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, as long as he can keep the issues intact, we don't know. This is a great pick.
Rabbi, I mean, we're talking about this run on wide receivers, but I mean, I look at where each one of these guys have ended up, and I think where each one of them has ended up has been, a good place for them to end up. I mean, JSN in Seattle automatically slots in as the 3rd guy. Quentin Johnson, gives Herbert a big target to pair with, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So I think that's a good match there. Talked about Addison. I like Zay Flowers going to Baltimore. I mean, you get not only does Lamar Jackson, who has kind of like, and here's the thing, Lamar Jackson is not the only one who says this, but the big knock on Baltimore for the last 3 years now has been the lack of, premium wide receivers, for Lamar to throw to. So, now he's got OBJ, and granted, OBJ is, is a bit of a wild card coming off the knee injury. How much of, the old OBJ in terms of that, dynamic skill set is there. You got Rashad Bateman, who they got last year in the draft, who's developing nicely. And now you got Zay Flowers to come in and be a slot guy. And you've already got one of the best pass catching tight ends in Andrews to go. And then, you pair them with that backfield. I really like these last 3 wide receiver picks in terms of where they've gone to and how they'll fit in that scheme. I really want to see what changes Todd Monken makes to the Baltimore Ravens offense. How much do they get away from, the kind of how much sprinkles are they going to add to the previously, to the vanilla ice cream that the Ravens had been calling their passing attack for the last few years. I don't think they go all rocky road right off the bat, but it'll be interesting to see how much Monken expands the route trees and the passing concepts to bring them closer to the 21st century of NFL offenses, which they haven't run for the entirety of Lamar Jackson's time there.
Okay, so I actually looked online, so I will be right on this one. Let's circle back to the New York Football Giants. They moved up one spot to go up to pick 24, gave up a fifth, and I saw a seventh on ESPN, but I can only confirm the fifth right now. And they're going to select the backup quarterback that we were going to talk about in our discussion. That's Deonte Banks from Maryland.
Really? Really? I like this.
Wow. Adam Maryland.
Well, you know what?
Let's go to Joe real quick because
really?
Joe's going to go right after this. Joe, you said cornerback was a need. That looks like the direction that they're going from, according to a bunch of stuff I've seen online. I like the pick. I think Deonte Banks was the last good first-round talent out of there in the biggest position, I think, of need for the Giants in this draft.
Yeah, and this is the kid they've been talking about a lot lately, that they really think that he fits into the system. Let me just see what comes up here.
Yeah, they're just gonna make it official now, but I'm 97% certain that it is going to be Deonte Banks of Maryland as we look at controls.
Only 97%?
97, there it is.
That's 100%.
You're right.
Because
That's official.
Earlier, but that's the thing. By the way, I don't think he's been picked yet. Yeah, the guy who we had talked about before, Nolan Smith, has also not been picked yet, by the way. That ironic question. All right, so back to Deonte Banks.
So I think the move up was to make sure they stayed in front of Dallas, and to go up and get him. It was probably between him and Porter Jr., but I think that Deonte Banks is a little bit more physical without the handsy stuff, Jay, that you were talking about.
Agreed.
He's he's a little bit bigger. He's almost 200 pounds. Comes from a Maryland team, which means he can probably tackle fairly well. And, is a little bit of, so he's got 38 tackles, 2 interceptions, 11 pass breakups, quick guy. I like this pick. I thought cornerback would be where they needed to go. And like you said, the top guys went off early, but to be able to get this guy here and only have to move up one spot, and they had 10 picks, and that's what I said to you earlier is I'm sure they're not picking 10 guys. There's a chance to move around.
They're down to 8 now.
Yeah, so that's fine. That's all you really need anyway. But I think that was Dallas calling Jacksonville to move up, and the Giants saying, and no, we want to go there. They didn't want to lose out. Just we all know Dallas needs defensive help too. So I think I like the pick. I think it's a great idea.
Ironically enough, Joey Porter Jr. is now, because we didn't even mention Emmanuel Forbes was actually the second cornerback pick taken off of the board from Mississippi State. So Porter now drops down to number 5 at least on the cornerback board if he gets picked next. Anthony, I like the move for the Giants. I think this is the right move.
You know what? I don't just like the pick. I love this pick because you talk about a Giants secondary. No disrespect to Cornell Flott or Darnell Holmes, but the Giants desperately need a guy who could possibly be a number 1 corner. And line up. Yeah, look, they need someone who can line up on the other side of Dory Jackson. He's a big physical defensive back who can tackle. He's showing in a defensive backfield that only has 6 interceptions all season. I mean, this Giant team, when they played great, they were amazing, but they didn't take the ball away. They didn't force nearly as many takeaways as you would hope for a Wake Martingale-style defense that pressures the quarterback as often as they do. And they had a lot of injuries to the defensive backfield either that didn't quite help. So there was a lot of plug and play pieces that was kind of the issue with the Giants. And we saw when they were at their worst, that backfield was incredibly suspect. Look at some of his strengths, experience, wide ways of coverages. We know Martin done lots of disguise and defenses and split packages. Outstanding signs and waves has an outside corner. Lateral slide to mirror and slow the release. Use independent hands to rewrite the receivers, which is great because this means he can be physical and not draw penalties. And when you're in the NFC East and you're going up against the teams like Dallas and Philadelphia who have weapons on the outside, you're going to have to be able to stick and be physical with those receivers, but you can't draw penalties on the top of that. So to be disciplined, if he's going to be able to improve on his discipline, I think he could be a really top-notch defensive back for the Giants. It's been a while since the Giants really had that. The last guy they had actually helped the Eagles get to the Super Bowl last season. So I believe this is a really great pick for the Giants. They needed some help in the defensive backfield in the worst way, and I can see him. Like I said, I can see him come out of training camp as being the number 2 corner alongside Adoree Jackson, eventually being that number 1 guy.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, help the Eagles with the Super Bowl, get to the Super Bowl last year. Help the Eagles
and help them lose the Super Bowl too.
You know, I agree with you gents. I love the pick. We knew the cornerback was a need for the Giants. And to have the number 4 ranked cornerback, fall to them here is a gift. The things that, I'm going to be keeping an eye out from him. First off, he gets to learn from Patrick Peterson, one of the best to ever play defensive back in the NFL. These are the things that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Joe, you said he's not as handsy as Joey Porter Jr. And that's true. Only 5 pass interference calls, though 3 defensive holding calls last year. He needs to improve and do a better job of toggling his eyes between the backfield and the route. So that's something he's got to keep an eye on. He's got to trust his technique better against NFL receivers. He's going to be he projects his best as an outside press man corner with some upside, in zone looks. And obviously that right there kind of plays into what Wink Martindale does a lot of. So from that standpoint, he's a fit. He does a nice job staying on top against go balls. He does a really good job of locating the ball in the air. He needs to improve his off coverage. When those situations, he's a little high in his pedal and he tends to waste some steps when he plants and drives. This is a guy who he gets classified as what do they call it? A clobber and cover type of cornerback. So, that competitive makeup's going to do him well in the NFC East. He played Marvin Harrison Jr., who was hands down Ohio State's best receiver last year. He played him to pretty much a draw. But that right there, if you look at that film, that showed you the upside and the downside of his game. So I love the pick. And like I said, he gets to learn at the feet of Patrick Peterson, who's one of the best to ever lace him up and line up opposite a receiver. So,
and plus, he's already from, he went to school in Maryland, so he's used to the weather, he's used to the Northeast. It's not like you're picking somebody out of Louisiana or wherever where they're going to
UCLA
coming in New York or whatever. So he's already used to that. So.
Yeah.
By the way,
it's a great pick.
That was 5 for 68, by the way, for Marvin Harrison. So that's essentially a draw. By the way, first of all, the Buffalo Bills got Dalton Kincaid and trading with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a move that I really love just to close out this draft. And 6 trades, by the way, tonight, my head would have exploded. I would have already been on the train back home in this situation. Guys, great show. It's time to go to bed. Thank you, Joe Tufaro. Anything you want to plug before we end the night? I know you're doing a lot of ref stuff coming up here shortly, but anything you want to plug before we go?
No, again, it's always, this is always such a long night to get through, but I think this format actually worked a lot better than what we normally try to do, is talk about every pick as it comes up. It was a lot easier to do this. And And like you said, you kind of got a little lucky that every time we talked about a group, it started to go a little bit. And,
The wide receiver thing was pretty awesome, but I knew we knew that was
Yeah.
coming, but everything worked out except.
And here's the interesting
Yeah.
thing. Will Levis is still
On the board. Yes.
on the board.
And unless somebody trades for him, he's probably going to go day
He's
two.
dropping
He's not
at
going
this
to Dallas.
point.
He's not going to Jacksonville. He's not going to Cincinnati. He's not going to.
He's the next Aaron Rodgers. So be sitting there.
Yeah.
Is San Francisco
So that means he'll be on the
still
Jets in
in this
15 years.
Honestly, the only team I can see left that might go take him is New Orleans. And
trade?
you know,
Well, New Orleans wouldn't do
at
that.
28.
Yeah, but they
So
have 4
that-
years of Derek Carr, so I don't think that they're going to. But that's just my
Oh,
opinion.
no.
All right.
Hey guys, I would say this. It's been what? This is the third year of doing it in this format. It's been
Yeah, I
fun.
think we might have done this
Look, I think this is probably the wackiest of the years we've done it this way because of the constant
Not at the
trick.
top, but everything else.
Yeah, the
Well, you know,
amount of
it's-
trades, the shifting and moving that's been going on. But this is why this format is so fun because we have to react in real time, and it just kind of like in real time our reactions to some of the picks. And I know there was, like I said, the Steelers moving up to get Jones. I think that's to get the guy they needed. I think that was great because the Steelers, at least me growing up and watching the Steelers, whether it's Cowell or Tomlin, they were at their best running downhill and power football. And I think the Steelers, they had to get back to that if they want to help pick it out and kind of get back to the top of that division. So I think it was a great move to move up. And in our reaction with the Jets, I think they were just stuck with a rock and a hard place because I think they were going to go offensive line, and then when that happened with the Steelers, well, we saw what happened after that. So I think, like I said, this format and doing it this way, it's been really fun. It's been great. It's kept me on my toes the last few years. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'll say this, and Anthony, the thing, you think about the stark difference between this year, where the Jets are at 15, started at 13, moved back to 15. Giants at 25. And then, compared to last year when both teams were picking in the top 10 with multiple picks. So, I mean, it's what a difference a year makes in terms of, what we've been used to the last, ever since Joe started doing the draft. It's the first time he actually has to stay up late because the Giants and Jets aren't picking at the beginning of the draft. The thing, here's my last comment on the whole thing with the Jets. And I circle this back to what I said in our Aaron Rodgers segment. When you give up that amount of draft capital, you can't make a mistake with what you're left with. And I think that's going to come back to bite the Jets. Look, for all we know, McDonald's going to turn out to be, a really good pass rusher, whether it's, he's an all-pro racking up, 15 sack seasons, or he's just a, part of a rotation where he's, a solid, third down contributor. But you can't afford to make a mistake when your draft capital goes from this to this in the span of a week because you basically, give away the kitchen sink to get a guy like Aaron Rodgers. So on the surface, that appears to be a mistake. Only time will tell. But, obviously it'll be interesting to see what Joe Douglas says about where they had this guy on their board and why they took him. So to me, that's the head scratcher of the night. But I mean, it's very Jets-like, isn't it, Rabbi?
I do laugh that Dallas has now been jumped twice because Buffalo jumped them to get Dalton Kincaid too, although they're about to get Michael Myers. But see, I did end up the night with the Dallas bashing. All right, for Joe Tufaro, Jay Kaplan, and Anthony Strait, welcome away. We're done. This has been On the Sports Line. Please join us on all our social media, youtube.com/On the Sports Lines. That's where you see all of the stuff on demand. Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines live. And Jay?
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sports Lines, where you will find the link to this epically 3-hour-long show tomorrow.
15-minute long.
3:15, yes. Along with other nuggets, news items, and assorted other things in sports that we think you will find interesting and are worth your time to check out.
We'll talk NBA during our next show where we have the Knicks and the Heat The Celtics had the Sixers officially after tonight. The Suns and the Nuggets, KD versus Jokic, and a possible Lakers Warriors series. So just a little bit of all those things. We'll talk about that and some local in the second round of the hockey playoffs. It's probably going to be the team in Jersey. Whatever. Anyway, good night from On the Sports Line.
Have a good
Yeah,
night,
everyone.
everybody.